meeting to be dealt with under terms related to enterprise programs and services, item 7.3, and further that the agenda for the February 23rd, 2017 Regional Council meeting be approved as amended. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. That brings us to our first delegation then. Rochelle Campbell and Tamika Boyce and Diane Boyce of the City of Mississauga residents requesting the reinstatement of the Affordable Home Ownership Program. Welcome, ladies.
And how's everyone doing today? Good. Okay, excellent. Okay. My name is Tamika Boyce, and I'm here with my mother, Diane Boyce, and a friend, Rochelle Campbell. I'd like to thank the Council for hearing our plea regarding reinstating the Affordable Home Ownership Program. The suspension of the program without notice has been devastating, as we were denied the opportunity to qualify for down payment loan assistance. Unless we literally win the lottery, it would be impossible for our family to achieve home ownership. We have had a keen interest in this program for many years and have been preparing ourselves in concrete and practical ways to access the program in 2017. Our preparation included research of home ownership, in particular, mortgages, property taxes, home insurance, utilities, and maintenance. As well, we have organized our present home and cleared out any unwanted items to make the move process easier and more cost-effective. Most importantly, we have been on a budget and have been saving for a deposit and closing costs. Supporting families with their dream of acquiring a home leads to personal growth and immense gains in their well-being, financial, and family security. The ability to choose your community and home is a real psychological boost and a great inspiration for future success. Home ownership is a responsibility we take very seriously, and we urge Council to fulfill our passionate need to feel the pride associated with home ownership. Thank you very much for listening. I hope we have conveyed how important this program is to the well-being of our family.
Thank you. If you just remain seated, or did you have something to add?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead
Yes,
then. Sorry.
thank you. First, I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to address you today. I'll introduce myself. I'm Rochelle Campbell, a resident of Mississauga, a single parent of 4 children at home, ages 8, 11, 14, and 19. I've lived in Peel for over 16 years, and I currently reside in a co-op housing obtained through the Region of Peel. I pay market rent as I should, since I'm employed full-time. I pay rent, water, hydro, and gas, and I pay approximately $1,700 per month between housing charge and utilities, just as any homeowner would, the difference being I do not own my own home. I was really counting on the Peel Affordable Home Ownership Program to make my home ownership dream a reality. I'd known about the program since 2009, when it was being marketed towards market rent units within Peel Housing. I've been saving, planning, organizing, and researching. I saved as much as possible with the resources I have. I repaired my credit and kept in touch regularly with the program coordinator regarding program start dates. I was aware that Council had approved funding for the 2016-2017 year, and finally I was ready. In August 2016, I was informed through the Peel website that funding was on hold and the program would not be running. Council had cancelled the funding. A decision made, I believe, without notice, no opportunity for me to plan differently or speak out on the matter. This important fact meant my hopes and dreams and future aspirations were shattered. The plug pulled without consultation, without what I believed, Council truly understanding the impact on my life and others. Home ownership for me would be impossible without the down payment assistance offered by the program. I felt down and entered into a depression, realizing home ownership may never be a reality in my lifetime. But then I said I can do something. I can speak up and let my voice be heard to help others, help myself and others in the same predicament. Maybe Council would see the value of the program and how it moves residents like me to full independence and self-sufficiency while directly tackling poverty. Thank you.
Okay, so we are aware that Peel Council has decided to use the budget funding to lower the housing wait list and to tackle poverty, and that there is no more funding for the Affordable Home Ownership Program. Who can argue with lowering the wait list? However, when you equate the program with tackling poverty, you actually lower the housing wait list.
The premise of the Affordable Home Ownership Program has always been to help first-time homeowners get into the housing market, understanding that this first home is rarely a forever home.
And therefore, when Peel provides the interest-free loan, it's a win-win situation. When that money is returned, it goes right back into the pot for another person to access or to the Human Services budget.
When residents move from their market rent units, this frees up a unit for individuals requiring a subsidy.
Some individuals who are the working poor long to own a home but need assistance with their down payment to achieve their dreams. When Peel assists and moves a resident to self-sufficiency, they are no longer in poverty.
Owning a home helps build financial security, which can be passed on to future generations and can change the whole trajectory of a family.
Families can tell a story of how the program has changed their lives. It can prevent generational housing issues, create opportunities for children in that family, and change their stars. When they know the home ownership is reality, the sky is the limit. You have just broken the cycle of poverty.
Home ownership has the potential to change the future of children because as their surroundings improve, the odds of success are increased. The effects of living in poor substandard environments are well known, especially the effects on children and youth.
In terms of the housing market, the government has done a fantastic job in strengthening the rules to home ownership. The strict rules to qualify for a mortgage and the importance of good credit are the responsibility of the individual and not Peel Region. The minimum deposit to hold a house today is $10,000. This means that potential candidates have to have at least $10,000 to proceed with this program.
Thanks, Rochelle. Government rules have not affected the program negatively. 5% down is still all a family requires if the home is less than $500,000. The $20,000 interest-free loan Peel Affordable Housing provides, plus the $10,000 that we would have to have on our own from individuals, would total $30,000. This is more than enough to own a home valued at $400,000 or less. And we've done a lot of research, so I have a lot of homes that I've seen, that I've researched that could definitely fit in the program that we could get.
The program is an invaluable resource for low-income families, single parents, marginalized people, immigrants, and others who require this type of support.
There are a variety of unique family circumstances that make this program so vital to the community. Single parents, two-parent families, a couple with no children. As you can see, there are many types of families in our community.
The Affordable Homeownership Program is a wonderful model that should be duplicated widely. Peel should be very proud of the success of this program.
This vital program helps those who qualify and dream of home ownership, but would otherwise not be able to achieve it. Providing subsidized housing, transitioning to a market rent unit, and helping families to eventually exit Peel housing directly incorporates the principles of the Peel Poverty Reduction Strategy. So in closing, we're asking Council to reinstate the program for at least the 1 year it was cancelled without notice, and to afford Tamika and Diane Boyce, as well as myself, Rochelle Campbell, the opportunity to access the program with a priority status, or consider giving us the program when a participant sells their home and returns the funding to Peel. We consider this presentation our appeal of the decision rendered by the Human Services Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you just remain in place. Thanks very much for your presentation. I do have a list of some councillors that may have some questions. Councillor Downey.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, this question is actually for staff. I'm wondering if our Commissioner of Human Services would care to make comment on some of the comments that have been made throughout the presentation, just for clarification.
Yes, thank you, I would. I would like to provide some context to the program itself and the decision that was made by Council. I have some slides. Thank you very much. On July 7th, in the report, A New Plan for Housing Investment, Council approved the reallocation of the provincial investment in housing funding from the Home and Peel program to support those in the greatest need in our community, applicants and households on the waiting list. In August, we provided notice on our website that the Home and Peel program was on hold. Next slide, please. There is no indication that the Home and Peel program substantially frees up rental units for those along the housing continuum, and so it does not support those or assist those on the centralized waiting list. The Home and Peel Affordable Housing Program was designed to provide low to moderate income residents with an opportunity to qualify for down payment loan assistance to purchase a home in Peel Region. The program provided 681 low to moderate income residents with down payment loan assistance during the period of 2008 to 2016. Of the participants in this program, 23% have discharged. That means they sold their property or they repaid their loan early. And as a sign of the times, you can see that participants made significant equity gains reflecting the rising property values in Peel. An average appreciation of $75,000 and the median was $61,000. Next slide, please. However, this program was not without its challenges. With limited resources, we did have issues with trying to find a fair and equitable way to select applicants. At first, we considered a lottery, but eventually we went with opening up the website and using a first-come, first-serve option, which of course led to a lot of disappointed individuals. Additionally, we did see some minor misuse of this program, with real estate agents trying to obtain and use the funding to attract new clients. Fortunately, we had significant checks and balances in the system to screen them out. And despite an increase in the maximum allowable housing price to $355,000 approved by Council in 2015, it was becoming increasingly difficult for applicants to find a home at that value. Our next steps in terms of the program. We are awaiting official confirmation from the Ministry of Housing that we can transfer the $1.2 million in funding, as well as some residual funding related to loan repayments to other programs. We believe we will receive notice from the ministry in their new fiscal year, April. As always, we continue in Human Services to look for new and innovative program opportunities to see how we can assist those on the centralized wait list. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Miles?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies, I just want to tell you that I think you're very brave for being here and the amount of work and research that you have done so that when you came in front of council, you came informed. Don't get upset. You should be very, very proud of yourself for coming here and giving your perspective to members of council. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we all try and make decisions based on what we think is best for the residents of Peel. And it's really good for us to hear the perspective of someone who is actually living with that need and that desire to own a home and to have a home. So I really think that you should stand tall and stand proud of yourselves for coming in front of us today and stating your case. Mr. Chairman, I would like to receive the delegation, and I would like to have the opportunity for myself, and I don't know if any other members of council would like to have the opportunity to think about the requests that these ladies have made. You know, I'm looking at our report today, and I'm just talking off the top of my head, but I'm looking at the report today where we are going to be spending, you know, anywhere from $280,000 a unit to 300 and something thousand a unit to house a person or a family. And then if you equate that to an investment of $20,000 to house a family, maybe not the exact same circumstances, but certainly making an impact on providing affordable housing in Peel. So I really am not comfortable in just simply saying to these ladies who have come in front of us and bared their hearts to us about their dreams for the future by saying sorry. I would like to see council give some consideration to the requests that they've made, and so that we can provide a proper response back to them, depending upon whatever decision is made. So I'm looking for, and maybe the CAO could help in this particular instance as to what kind of recommendation I should be putting on the floor. A referral back to staff for consideration, but I think, there's probably some members of council who would like to get their mind around this as well. I know I would.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think direction to staff after council has discussed this to report back with more information at the next meeting could assist council if the council doesn't come to a decision today.
Okay. Okay. I may come up with a recommendation, but for now, thank you.
And Councillor Miles, just to remind you, if you do, just please get a seconder as well. We can ask for a seconder. Okay, Councillor Yanika.
Well, first of all, I'd be happy to second that motion. I'd be happy to second that motion because, Gail, you've in a synopsis, you've given my thoughts as well. First of all, to you, I want to tell you, I've been here 28 years. I don't know that I've ever seen a more dignified presentation to me. I mean, it's just so heartwarming and so from the heart and yet so well done. Something's wrong here. We have a problem. It's ironic that you come this week because we had a very interesting conversation around, and you've touched my heart so much that I'm going to share some with you. And normally I wouldn't. Very proud of my son, who was blessed that he was born into a great family, finished universities, started working, and he's put some money aside and said, Mom and Dad, this is me. This is my house. He says, Dad, time to get a house, time to get into the market. And his mother and I said, listen, whatever you put aside as a down payment, we will match. I'm going to be very honest with you. I haven't got money in the bank, but I have a second line of credit on my home. So if he has $25,000, my wife and I will go borrow that, give it to him. And he was all happy. And he went out in the marketplace, and it's not hard to find a $250,000, $300,000 condo in Mississauga. Mission accomplished. Then his realtor came back and said, you have a problem. What problem do we have? You don't qualify for the mortgage. I go, how the hell do we not qualify for the mortgage? I'll sign. Between the two of you, you don't qualify for the mortgage. I'm the old white guy that makes $100,000 a year. I own $1.5 million home. It has a big mortgage on it. I have no other assets. I have a wife at home for 28 years that's generated no income. We can put the down payment down. We can't close on the house. My son and I combined. What a life lesson it was. You know the only way I can help him, and we're considering it? I got to sell my house to help my kids. I, in a manner of speaking, am in your situation. Dramatically different, I acknowledge that. Something's wrong with this, that our children can't live in our communities. That's my point. That's my fundamental point. Something is wrong that our children can't raise families like we have. And so, Gail, this is why you hit a nerve with me. Having learned that just this weekend, this is not right, and we have to do something about it. Now, the next point, this is why I'm so sad. You're not here asking for a handout. You're here asking for a hand up. You're not here asking for fish. You're saying, let me teach myself to fish, and I'll go out and feed myself for the rest of my life. And $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 at the front end doesn't allow us to help you? That's not right. I know the reasons why. 1, 2, 3 million on our budget is quite a bit. The money we would loan to someone like you is the equivalent of taxes on a house for 10 years. We don't have the money. We're not the level of government that has all the money. The provincial, federal are. So this is a mess, and this is wrong, and this is what we should be devoting resources to. Remembering that you're not giving them money. They pay it back. It's just a help up to get you on your feet and contribute like you always, and you're not able to do that in Peel today. So I agree with you entirely, Gail. We have to have another look at it. If the provincial, federal governments abandon us like they do on so many other files, we've got to step up and do something, because this is the most logical investment we could possibly make. So you really hit a nerve with me. I got to tell you, I feel for you, and it's something that we need to do something about. So I would happily second your motion, Gail, and I welcome it coming back so that we have to have another look at it. I know Councillor Parrish is on the list, and I'm pretty sure I know what she's going to say. We've got to do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always hard to follow Councillor Anika, but thank you for coming in and for talking to us and bringing this to light. There are many families in your position. And as Councillor Anika said, there are some of us who are working that wouldn't qualify for a mortgage. I'm working with a group of individuals, families with young adult children who are disabled and looking to go out on their own. And this program would be a great program for those families and to help them. And as Councillor Anika said, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. Councillor Parrish brought something forward because it's the inequities in funding to the region of Peel from the province of Ontario. We are a fast-growing region. We have a lot of needs here, but again, we're short on funding. So Councillor Parrish is heading up something to go down to the province and ask for money. Our residents here in Peel need help. I couldn't qualify for a mortgage a few years ago, and I had my house paid off for many years and had to take out a mortgage because of reasons, and my bank turned me down. So you know what, even some of us who are working, we can't get mortgages. So I hear what you're saying. You have children to feed and clothe and put a roof over their head. So I guess I'm going to wait and hear what our colleagues around this table do. But Councillor Miles, I'm happy to support what you're bringing forward, because it's not just yourselves. There are many of us in that position. There are single moms. I'm a single mom. And you know what? It's tough. It is really tough, because children are very expensive to take care of in this country. So I hear you, and I'm happy to support whatever Councillor Miles is bringing forward, and hopefully the province will listen to us and provide some funding so that we can help families like yourselves. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parrish.
Well, I wanted to start by asking the staff, you talked about in your presentation people paying off the loans either by selling the homes or by paying them off and living in them. When they sell those homes, the market's going crazy right now. What happens to the increased value of the house?
So, through the chair, we have an arrangement whereby the equity is split between the applicant and the region. So depending on how long they've been in the home, they repay the principal loan that's outstanding, and then based on the impact value, we receive the loan back and a piece of the equity. And then they
Okay.
take their equity, and in many cases, they buy a bigger home or they move on to something else.
When you say a piece of the equity, is it 50%?
It is a formula based on the number of years that the loan is still outstanding. So if the loan is almost repaid, it's a smaller piece than if they're only in the house for a year or so.
So let's say they're in the house for 10 years, they've got very little left to pay. The value of the house has gone up $300,000. How much would we get back?
On average, we are getting back around 6%, 5 to 6% of the increase in equity.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Unique, I'm not going to support this. I am very proud of you ladies for coming in, and I think you've done a good job. There are people out there that can't do what you did today because they can't even find a house to live in. They can't find a place to rent. We've got 12,000 people on the waiting list, and I think if we're going to concentrate our money where it's going to do the most good for the most people, it should still be going into purchasing and finding homes for people who are literally on the street or sleeping in their friends' couches. I understand your problem. It's a serious problem now that the market's gone crazy. But I think the staff made the right decision by ending this program and putting it into where it's most needed. So I thank you for coming in. If the province gives us more money, I would be happy to reconsider. But at this point, I think we have to make decisions based on how they can help the most people in the most serious difficulties. And you all sound like you're comfortable. You've got a roof over your heads. You're not living in someone else's house and being pitched out on the street. So there are 12,000 people in our region that are in that state. So I appreciate what you want to do, but I still think we have to make decisions based on priorities. So I won't be supporting changing the decision we made a couple weeks ago.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. Councillor Parrish, I agree with you that our priority one has to be those that are at risk of homelessness and reducing that wait list for those the most in need. But I do see a lot of value in this program as well. I will be supporting the motion from Councillor Miles because I don't think it ever hurts to take another look at decisions that we have made. We did that when we made the big decision to get out of the daycare business. And by taking a long, more sober look at the whole program, I think the decision that we ultimately made while we continued with getting out of the business, at the end of the day, we dealt with it, I think, in a much better way than if we had just cut the cord right away and gotten out of that as a regional business. So, Councillor Unica, I think if you look around the room and those of us that have grown children, the one thing that we all want to do is support our kids. We want them to be independent. But, I fortunately, I guess, as sole earner in my family, I guess I was able to co-sign both of my daughter's initial mortgages. And, thank goodness they paid them because if I had to pay, I don't know what I would have done. Being second signer on there can be a little risky at times too. But, my kids were in that position where I was able to do that for them. And not everyone is. And, it's not that we've been giving the money and not getting it back. I think that's the difference in this program. And I do think that moving people up into home ownership, you young ladies spoke very eloquently and very heartfelt. It does impact families. It does impact children. And I think it does, the more we can create a better life for young families in our community, it bodes well for our future. And you know what? It helps our economy because every time a house sells, every time people move up, the economy is assisted, whether it's through taxes that we may not get, but, stimulating the economy like that is always a good thing. Even though we may not see the direct results. And Councillor Parrish, I know you've spoken a lot about helping the middle income earner so that they can move up a step and free up space for the lower income. And I think this is one way of doing that. It's not on itself and on its own going to be the solution, but there's all parts of this puzzle that filter down, and I think this is one part. So I would like to see, I'd like to see another report coming back. I don't think at the time we made the wrong decision because we were focusing on the homelessness issue and those that are in immediate need, and that is very important. But I'd also like to see if there's any other way of funding the program and maybe looking at another business case. David, I'll look to you, that we could still offer it, maybe in a little bit different way, but let's take another look at it like we did with the daycare. And staff came up with some really wonderful, innovative ideas on that, and I think they can do it again.
Thank you. Mayor Thompson.
I want to thank you ladies for being here, and I got to tell you, you've done your homework. So to know to qualify, you've obviously started to establish budgets, you've done your homework. Was that something that the Region Appeal provided, or how did you go about going about doing the homework that you did that you knew that you required?
It's something that we wanted to do for a long time. So we've actually, both of our families, we actually started off in subsidy. Then we moved from subsidy to market, and so this is naturally the next step. So with this, I wanted to make sure that when I'm moving into home ownership, hopefully, I know what I'm getting into. So for example, like it used to be, you can hold a home for $5,000. No, it's $10,000 now. So we've done like extensive research in like what it really takes to move from a market rent unit to owning a home. And I felt like that's really important because I didn't want to get into a situation where we get into a home and it's like, oh, we forgot to think about this thing, or we forgot to think about this. So I found it was important to do the research so that when I came to you guys, or just when I moved into a home, like I knew that I can handle it.
Did the Region Appeal ask you if you've done your homework like this, or did they provide services on where you could find information out?
No, we just did it on our own.
Okay.
I have kept in contact with the program coordinator, asking questions, start dates. I know my name is probably familiar to her because I've called probably once every 4 months just to ask questions, so to be informed. So that's as much as I know, and asking realtors and just trying to find information, asking people who own their homes and new home buyers.
Yeah. And if I can go back to Human Services, when people come to acquire, do you ask, or when you vet, do you find that people like these, is everybody pretty much like them that have done their homework to know what they need?
Through the chair, I would say that these ladies are more prepared than most. When an applicant applies to the program, we do have information sessions so we can go through the expectations with them of what is required.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you've definitely done your homework. And one thing I noticed is we've helped 700 families in an 8-year period. So if you look at a 10-year averages, which we should look at financially, we're helping about 1% of the population, maybe. Pretty close to it. And to me, is Councillor Nika said, giving a hand up is one thing. I'm going to say I do disagree. I would support Councillor Miles to come back to have another look at it, understanding that, and you're probably of the exception, but I think maybe you've set a bar and a standard that if people are that well prepared, we need to give it a hard look at. I think it's very dangerous to have all your eggs in one basket. I started into business when I was borrowing money at 22%, finally got a locked-in mortgage at 18.5. So trust me, you not only have to be good at what you do, you got to be better than everybody else to survive. And I'm going to tell you, I do understand the challenges. I can understand, Councillor Nika, where you're at, but I think it makes us all better people as we go forward. The challenge why I'm saying I support Councillor Miles is I said I don't want all our eggs in one basket. If we can help 1% be able to get into home ownership, we all benefit. Municipality benefits on the tax side of things too. We got to look at it's great that we're helping in the most vulnerable. Absolutely. Councillor Parrish is right. We got to help those people, but we can't just be focused on that. We represent everybody in Peel Region. And if we can help 1% of the population to get into full home ownership and do the homework that you people have done, I think we need to give it a hard look at. So, I'm always saying it's hard. We make difficult decisions, but sometimes if we're off the mark, it doesn't hurt to go back and do our homework a little bit more to find out if we got it right. So, Councillor Miles, I was going to second your motion, but Councillor Nika said it, but I think we need to go back and take a look at it. If this is just one way we can help 1% of the population to get ahead, we represent everybody in here, and I know the most vulnerable is our responsibility, but it's cost share. That's the role of government, is to share the wealth among everybody, and I think this is something we need to have a hard look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the delegation. I want to echo Councillor Anika's comments. There are many people who, I know you have to look around to see where the voice is coming from. We hear it all the time. People are looking for a handout. You are truly looking for the hand up, but more importantly, through your words today and your actions, you've really demonstrated that you're prepared to do what you need to do to qualify for a program. I have a question to staff. When people apply to the program, do we keep a wait list for it? How is it just, do we deal with the applications as they come in, 1, 2, or 5 a year? Or do we keep a list?
So we, through the chair, we open up the website and we allow people to apply, and it is first come, first serve. And then we have an information session, but I'm just going to check with staff. If people drop out, is there a list? Okay. So we invite more people, we take a list of more people than we have spaces for, so that if individuals come to the information session and they're not prepared to be in a position of buying a house, we go to the next people on the list. But we don't keep a long wait list.
Okay, so I think it's reasonable to expect that people will not, they may come to the information session, but they won't actually apply for the funds until they're in a position to do so. As the delegation today said, we know we need $10,000 in the bank. We know that we need to repair our credit and position ourselves for a successful application. So I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we pulled the rug out and that these are not the first folks who have been preparing themselves and doing what they need to do to qualify for a program. It's kind of like saving for that special thing at the store, and when you get there, it's been a discontinued item, and it's something you really wanted. So, and that would have benefited you. So, if Councillor Miles is going to refer this back for further discussion, I have to presume that you're not the only folks who have got caught in this decision in a negative way on the part of this council's decision. The bigger question is whether or not locally we should be in this business. I remember years ago, my parents bought their first home under the home plan. It was a provincial program called Home Ownership Made Easy, and you rented the land. The biggest cost of any home is the cost embedded in the sale price of the land that the developer had to pay to build it. And those homes were a 30-year land lease. So you lived in your home, you paid your taxes, and you paid kind of like a condo fee, but it was a lot less. I think it's semi-detached because it was like $56 a month for 30 years, and then at the end of the 30 years you paid market value or you paid a fixed price for it. And it's time for the provincial government and the federal government to step up and recognize that there is a significant role for them to play in this. That's a whole other conversation, not going to fix the problem that we have here today. But I really support sending this back to staff. I'm concerned that there are folks who, beyond our delegation today, that would qualify for the program, freeing up units in our own facilities and allowing for that churn of new folks to come in and move through the system as you folks have moved through and as the system is intended to have folks move through. So those are my comments. But, when we look at the recommendation that we have before us today in another part of the agenda, for a per unit cost of $335,000, the rate of return on that is far more dismal prospect than the investment in this program. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yanika.
Very much. Just a couple of points to follow up on. First, to Councillor Parrish. My point to Councillor Parrish was, and I think she's got the biggest social conscience around here, that as we go forward with the provincial federal governments, I would hope this is one of the files that we would bring up and say, here's a program that's working magnificently well. And again, we're not subsidizing, it's an investment. That was my point, Carolyn. This might be another one on the list that I'm sure you'd bring forward. Alan, I really appreciate your comments. You're giving me flashbacks, Alan. People forget you and I were born within a month of each other. Alan, I remember graduating from university, worked hard on my wife. My wife and I arriving from Montreal, bought our first home, modest $90,000 thing in Meadowvale, and she and I qualified for a mortgage at 19%. We were able to do it back then. And you can have a relatively wealthy dad today, and you can't do it today. So I remember those days, but we made it work. These kids can't make it work today. That's my point. The other point that I wanted to make, though, Elaine was leading me to it. If you can turn your minds to the following, and you know my mind works funny sometimes. Had these lovely ladies been here the day we were considering that program and made this presentation, I challenge any one of you to tell me, well, no, if that was the case, we would have grandfathered. If there were some that were looking at this plan and saying, I'm saving my money, I'm doing my math, I'm ready to go, I'm coming in next month, and then you find out, oh, you're getting rid of this? Had we known, I'd have said, and I think, Elaine, you were going, how many people were on a waiting list? How many people did we have in the hopper? It's unusual for governments to cut programs overnight and say, sorry, if you were in the hopper, we just thought we'd do this morning. Without making a motion, I would hope we could go back and say how many people had their ships in the water and were close to the shore, and if the quantum comes back and they tell us, you know, it was a half dozen, I would hope we could revisit that as well, wondering what the numbers might be and what we're looking at. Having said that, Carolyn, I supported the policy change because you're right. We're back to that old, with the limited resources we have, better off to give someone a roof that doesn't have one as opposed to someone that's already got something and trying to move up. That's a horrible decision to have to make. Because I go back to what I've said before. This is what's fundamental with this program. This isn't the, you know, the dollar you put in today that saves $7 of social service cost tomorrow. This is the dollar you put in today that saves the $7 and gives you back $1.20 later. Like, it just makes so much sense. But of course, like so many other great investments, we just haven't got the money to pull the trigger on it. So, Gail, I support your motion, but I hope in coming back, something staff will consider is, at the time that we dealt with it, there may have been a dozen families, 5 dozen families, whatever. I wouldn't mind getting my head around that and see what the extension for 60 days might have led us to do. So if staff could bring that back as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Most of the great comments have been made, so I'll try to make a few just to round it up for you. First of all, thanks for coming, and you're excellent spokespersons for this program. The unfortunate thing is we're like almost the wrong level of government. This is a little pilot project, a little light under the bushel that we've done that if you look back in time, and Councillor Moore mentioned it, this was looked after in the 70s. I grew up, and there's a whole subdivisions in Streetsville that were built under the home program. It made perfect sense. But we need billions of dollars of investment and in this type of a program. Friends, I had a long discussion with one of our paid-off co-ops in Streetsville. A couple hundred units, probably worth, I don't know, $70, $80 million. They're a success story. They've paid for their co-op. So I suggested to them, just for something to think about, maybe in the future, this could be a bank drawn on your equity to build more affordable housing for other people and come up with an equity sharing program. Try to be creative. And we're on the committee, Councillor Parrish, myself, and the mayor, to come up with new ways to get into home ownership for people, and maybe not, we're sort of stuck with the rental or the co-op, and we need some other models to go in. Equity sharing comes to my mind, that you live in a co-op, but at the end of it, you have you know, a piece of the action coming out of something like that that you can use to buy a house. But these things, it all came to a screaming end, I don't know, 15 years ago. Housing just wasn't interesting anymore for higher levels of government. And yet at the end of it all, we have this little tiny program that is a huge success that, you know, we could carry on, I'm sure, for $1 million. It's not going to make or break the region appeal. This program should be in the billions of dollars, not in $1 million at the region. So I have no problem with bringing it back. If we're going to go to the province and say, look at this micro program that works so well, and why aren't we adding some zeros to it to give people like you a chance to move up through the system, at the same time protecting the affordable rental section. Almost two different businesses. They are two different businesses to get people. Not everybody wants to own a home. Some people are quite happy to be, you know, in the subsidized home frontier. You're a little bit different than that, but really, you're a custom job now. There's not really a great program for people like you. And I'm sure you know. I'm telling you what you already know. So I would, of course, support referring it back. I think part of that referral would be to also send a letter to the House. We have I don't know about Brampton and Caledon, but we have all kinds of provincial MPPs crawling around City Hall these days. I don't know what's going on. So maybe it's a time to, you know, what a better program. Councillor Unique is right. It's not, we're not spending money, we're investing it. And if it takes 30 years, you take the speculation out of it best you can, because you don't want people just using this money to flip houses. But there's a good chunk of the economy that we could be looking after, and we're not. We're zero rated. The younger councillors here won't even remember that old hippie program in the 70s. A lot of people, our parents, weren't able to buy a house with. So there's nothing new about what you're asking at all. It just isn't interesting to senior levels of government. So if for no other reason, even if in the end we cancel the $1 million, big amount of money we put into it, it's an excellent thing to go back to the province. And maybe some smart MPPs might see the merit in setting up something like this. I'd be the first to support it, believe me. But anyway, that's just a couple thoughts about it. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. You've refreshed my memory on the program for sure. Councillor Tovey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I agree with all the comments around the table. It's nice to hear intelligent, informed comments, and I think most of the intelligent, informed comments I've heard are actually from you three girls, so thank you very much. It's been said, this is an incredibly massive problem. 4 or 5 years ago now, I was fortunate enough to go to the World Poverty Conference in London, England. London, England, 1/3 of London, England is social housing because of the price. And I stayed in the slums. I didn't even see Buckingham Palace, but it was a real eye-opening tour. And around the corner from where I was staying, there was a real estate office, and there was a one-bedroom, 750 square foot walk-up flat for sale for £1 million. And I checked that day, that was 1.52 million Canadian dollars. So I don't see our real estate values going down at all. Canada is one of the most desirable, if not the most desirable in the country in the world to live in now. You know, we're safe, we basically get along, we have a pretty decent economy compared to most other places. So I don't see the house prices going down anytime soon. I'm going to support the referral. I think it's very prudent and wise to do that. Although I do agree completely with Carolyn Parrish, and Councillor Carlson's pointed out as well, the need is so massive that we can't possibly do this alone. But seeing as how you are so informed, one of the things I was wondering is, have you approached Habitat for Humanity at all? I mean, I was fortunate enough to do, I restored the Elliott House up here in Brampton. It was built in about 1880 and weighed 360 tons when we moved it. 1861, thank you. And we moved it 2 kilometers and turned it into a duplex for 2 amazing families. And you remind me so much of their character and their fortitude. So I was wondering, have you approached Habitat at all?
I have. A few years ago, my mother brought it to my attention, but there's a cutoff when it comes to your income. And based on the amount of children I had, I needed to make, I believe it was under 40 or something like that. And I had just missed it. So I just didn't qualify.
Yeah, have you checked recently? Because I know they've got a project going on right now, and I believe up in Caledon, I think, right now.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Yeah, you should. You'd be ideal candidates for sure.
Along with that, we've also looked into other sort of, I'm going to put quotations here, programs such as like Daniels and stuff like that. But the thing with that, it's soaring so high. So for example, last year, I believe there was like, it was starting at like 269,000. Now that same unit being built is 400K. So
Yeah,
we've looked into
exactly.
like other, not specifically Habitat, but like other programs like Daniels and other home like ownership programs. But it's either like we're priced out with the price, or like we don't qualify for that. So we've definitely looked into like different angles, and I'm just Google everything. I've looked into everything.
Can you swing a hammer?
I actually am an apprentice electrician, so I can.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And yes, I will move a motion to refer it back. I just wanted to respond, though, to some members of council. In the last probably 3 or 4 months during the budget process, we did set aside $150 million to deal with affordable housing, and it was a wide range of options that we as a region would undertake so that we would be able to assist people across the spectrum. In our reports today, we're looking at providing housing for people that make between $35,000 and $45,000 a year. So we're not just dealing with those that are homeless. We're dealing with people across the broad spectrum. We have been getting money. We have a report today where we're looking at spending $10 million to build 27 units. And once we build those 27 units, it's going to cost us $500,000 or more a year to maintain them and oversee them. So it's, I mean, this whole issue about ensuring that our community can be housed is one that we can't segregate and say we're only going to look after this group, because at the end of the day, then we just keep backing up. Everybody deserves a chance. And you know, I think for me, this is a real eye-opener. Here, we were able to provide the opportunity for 600-700 people to purchase a house. The majority of them have paid the money back, and they've moved on to bigger and better things. That's really good. And the cost to us was the original outlay was $20,000, and then there was the payback. So I think it's a really reasonable request for us to give consideration to. It wasn't the province and the federal government who said don't fund that anymore. We'd made that decision at council based on recommendations from our staff. And you know, the priority, our priorities were laid down in the strategic plan. So I don't believe that our staff are at fault at all. They looked at the priorities and they were looking at serving those that are most vulnerable. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't give consideration to others in our community who need some assistance. So my referral is to refer it back to staff, to take a look at it, to give consideration to the comments of all of the members of council here today, and if possible, to identify a source of funding for this program. So that would be my motion.
You've heard the motion, and I think it's, believe, seconded by Councillor Janica. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Well, I just want to commend you ladies for being here today, not only for your presentation, but certainly your opening comments were with respect to you're not just here presenting your case, but you're speaking on behalf of others that may be in the same situation. And, you know, it's often said that timing is everything. And, you know, if this had been a year ago, you wouldn't be here because you would have made the application. And what I'm most proud of is the fact that you've gone through the system. You started out with a subsidy, went to market rent. Now you're in the position of applying for this program, and the policy was changed. So as you've heard today, you've certainly made an impact with council, and they've passed a motion to refer it back to staff. So you'll be hearing from us in the future. Thank you. Our next delegation is, actually, we'll move receipt of the delegation, moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Tovey. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Our next delegation is Nancy Pozzanelli, Commissioner of Health Services, regarding tax opportunities for residents.
Good morning, Chair Dale and members of Regional Council. Suzanne Finn, Acting Director of Early Years and Childcare Services in Human Services, and I are pleased to share with you our File Your Taxes, Get Your Benefits campaign. This is one strategy of our term of council priority to reduce poverty, and a campaign that will help some of our most vulnerable residents. Many Peel residents, particularly those struggling due to low income, do not have access to government benefits. These are tax benefits that can make a significant difference in their overall income, in their lives. And why? It's because they're not necessarily filing their taxes. Every year, over $1 billion of income tax and tax credits for Canada's most vulnerable populations are never claimed. Just think of the impact that that money would do to those families and communities. This campaign will raise awareness of the importance of filing taxes to access these benefits and make no-cost professional help easier for these families to obtain. Here's what we know about Peel. 5% of Peel residents, many of which are our most vulnerable population, have not accessed their child and family benefit entitlement for which they are eligible, simply because they aren't filing their taxes. Now, doing taxes isn't usually described as being fun, and it's often daunting to do taxes on our own. So many of us here today have someone to do it for us. Peel residents with low incomes need that same help, but can't afford to pay for those professional services. And without the tax knowledge and know-how, they often and unnecessarily fear completing taxes because they fear having to pay back money they actually don't have. Many residents aren't aware of the numerous free community tax clinics already available in Peel. Access to these clinics can open doors to the government benefits they're eligible to receive. The real impact on lives could be tremendous. Suzanne is now going to tell you more about the actions underway and, more importantly, the way you can help open the doors for our most vulnerable residents.
Thanks, Nancy. So our 2016-17 campaign is aimed at encouraging families who have not filed their taxes to do so and then get the benefits that they're entitled to. The message is file your taxes, get your benefits. Applies to all low-income earners. The key to reaching these individuals and families is through connection through our network of social services organizations, including the Region of Peel that serves them. Through their direct contact and relationships with the target audiences, we can help make it easier for them to file the taxes. As part of the File Your Taxes, Get Your Benefits campaign, the Region of Peel frontline staff and the community that serves these individuals will receive a toolkit containing the following: flyers with tax clinic locations translated into 4 different languages, client information cards with tax credits and benefits on the back, service provider cards and benefit screening tools, as well as a video which will encourage them to remind clients to complete their taxes and to use the free community tax clinics that serve them to receive all their benefits. We're going to show you the video now. Maybe, yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if money grew on trees? But I bet it would be nearly impossible to get some for those who really need it. Now, most of us wish we could strap on our cape and swoop in to the rescue, but the reality is there's just not much we can do to help. Well, I'm here to tell you there's something you can do. Yes, I'm talking to you, and it's only going to take you about a minute. But first, I have a question for you. Did you know that residents in Canada have access to several tax credits? Unfortunately, there are still some people in lower income households who don't file their taxes. That includes individuals and families right here in Peel Region. Now let's get back to what you can do. All you need to do is ask the right questions. Next time you talk to your clients, ask them if they've filed their taxes in the last year. Is their household income below $40,000? Are they aware of the benefits they may be eligible for by filing their taxes? I mean, it's rather simple to explain. File your taxes, get your benefits. And they can even do it for free. All across Peel Region, volunteers are running tax clinics to support low-income families in filing their taxes at no charge. So take some time to spread the word. It's another way you can help reduce poverty in Peel.
So really for us, part of our campaign is success that all eligible Peel residents should receive the benefits that they're entitled to, and that they use the services available to receive it for free. And really, success will be that the more money will go into the pockets of those who need it the most. And what we're looking for is for you to help us spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for the presentation, and happy to spread the word. And I just wondered, maybe you can contact the area municipalities. We can post it on our websites and things like that for our residents. And I'm happy to take an electronic version as well, so I can also post it on my social media page and my newsletter. So.
Great. Thank you.
We'll certainly do that.
Yeah,
We'll get
this
that
is
to you.
great information for families, because you're right, a lot of us don't even know what we have access to. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Well, thank you. I was going to ask that you send it all out to all of us electronically. We all have our own social media. There's probably some agencies in the community that can help to spread the word on this as well. It almost needs to be like the flu shot. Maybe they could do this at Shoppers Drug Mart, but seriously, they need to be at places, where we have the critical mass, where you've got a large complex, have somebody go in and set it up there for the day, run the clinics through. It really is unfortunate, and this should almost be married with the presentation that we had for the registered education savings plan for low-income families for their kids. We had the presentation by the Peel Children and Youth Initiative a short while ago, and we were spreading the word about that as well. That's another opportunity to spread the word about a program that's available for families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just actually going to say almost exactly what Councillor Moore just said. A number of years ago, it was Peel Children and Youth Initiative that set up clinics in communities and partnered with, if local councillors wanted to, as well as the MPPs and MPs, to try to create opportunities as a hub where the residents could come and apply. Even banks were there as well. So do you have any of those, do you have any of those outcomes as to what were barriers? Have you talked with Peel Children and Youth Initiative, or I'm not saying it right, PCYC? No. You mentioned they're not accessing, people are not accessing many funds that are available to them, but I know that there has been, I participated in, I think, 5 in Ward 3, and they were all in conjunction with Peel Children and Youth Initiative. The MP was there, the local MP, MPP, a number of the banks to help the residents. Basically, it was a one-stop shop where they could set everything up right there and then. But I never saw any of the outcomes of how many people actually took advantage of it. And so do we have any of that information? Or I think that would be helpful. And also coordinating, I know with regards to if there's a way that we can coordinate through the newcomer, like Dixie Bloor Neighborhood Center, they were there as well, to get the word out. I think it's great what you're doing. I just think to try to spread the word, to Councillor Moore's point, it has to be places where there's like en masse amounts of people, and bringing everybody together in terms of a partnership to coordinate it. So, thank you.
That's exactly what we're doing. So we're reaching out to all the agencies and within the region of Peel to help spread the word. We've been out to the cities, the school boards, the settlement agencies, and we're going to launch all the information to them on the 27th of February, as well as release the video on March 1st. We have done some work on figuring out why people aren't filling out their taxes. We've done a study, as well as looked at some of the literature and reviewed that the federal government has done. And really it comes down to sometimes people who don't earn federal tax believe that they're not entitled. And then they're also worried about the fact that potentially they may have to pay something back, and there's a fear attached to applying taxes. So part of our campaign is try to bust the myths around that and work with people who they trust in the community to spread the word.
Councillor Tovey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to get a little more information as to how it actually looks, because I was just looking on our website here, and I see 9 clinic dates. So is that how it rolls out? I mean, so
So the Region Appeal would do 9 clinic dates, and if there's a need, we'll do more. But however, what we have embarked on as well too is to get our community partners involved as well too. So there are a host of many providers that already do provide clinics. Last year in the Region Appeal, there was around 15,000 people who got served through the tax clinics, and within the Region Appeal, there was 2,000. So part of our message that we're working on is to get more people in certain areas to run clinics, and we are being successful to move those forward. So what it is, the message, and it's on the website from the Canada Revenue Service, it shows all of the tax clinics. Doesn't mean to say that there aren't more, but as people contact us, we're going to make sure that they go to the right location.
But there, we wouldn't send anybody to someone's home?
We would not send
To
anybody to
help
anybody,
them.
so no.
Okay.
No, it would be an organization that's working with the federal government to do a voluntary tax clinic.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks very much for your presentation, and the video is excellent. I understand it was a staff person that put that together?
was.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, on behalf of council, certainly want to congratulate them for putting together that video. And I just wanted to make one suggestion, if it'll help, and if you'd reach out to Rogers to see if they'd broadcast that, almost like a community commercial type of thing. I'm sure they'd put it out. It would be great.
Great, thank you.
Motion to move receipt of the delegation moved by Councillor Moore, second by Councillor Fonseca. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. We'll move right into items related to enterprise programs and services. Councillor Fonseca, if you chair this section, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So item 6.1 is Holland Christian Homes. This is a deferral of development charges. Seeing no questions on the board, moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Moore. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 6.2, this is a Clean Water and Wastewater Fund Program update. This is with regards to timing of, when you read through the recommendation, we still have not received the funds have not been released from the or the provincial government to date, as well the 25% of the funds that we will be applying from regional reserve funds needs to be approved or added to the 2017 capital budget. I see no, Mayor Thompson.
I was wondering if it's appropriate for the chair to send a letter to say, hey, you know what? We provide a really good service for 1.5 million people. It would be really important. I'll support the report and I'll gladly move it, but I'm just wondering if a letter could go. Yeah, but I just want to make sure it goes, that's all. Thanks.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, so direction to have Chair Dale send the letter. Okay. Mayor Thompson, would you like to move the recommendation? Okay, moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Rass. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 6.3 is Managed Unified Communication and Collaboration Services. Sorry, I'm just looking for the page. Seeing no questions on the board. This is a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Yanika, seconded by Councillor McFadden. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 6.4 is a Region of Peel logo update, and there is a logo attached. Seeing no questions, there is a recommendation to approve the logo. Moved by Councillor Shaughnessy, seconded by Councillor McFadden. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. It's like a retro logo. 6.5 is the Peel 2041 Region Official Plan Review, ROPA 27, Adoption for Health and the Built Environment, Age-Friendly Planning and Technical and Administrative Updates. Seeing no questions, moved by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Mayor Thompson. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 6.6 is the transfer of permanent easement for Lakeview Wastewater Treatment Plant at 1300 Lakeshore Road East, Mississauga, Ward 1. Moved by Councillor Tovey, seconded by Mayor Thompson. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 6.7 is the proposed transfer of permanent easement located within the region's 0.3 meter reserve and buffer block on the south side of Regional Road 107, Bovaird Drive. This is in Brampton, Ward 5. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Miles. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.8 is Bill 68 and Bill 70, amendments to the municipal legislation, and this is for information. Moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Mahoney. All in favor? Oh, somebody on the board. Mayor Crombie. Question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was reading this with interest last night. I think it would be helpful as we have the discussion on the elected chair, when things are about to happen or they're pending or have just happened, to get more timely updates. This is a nice review, but all this has happened, and even when the province moved to the elected chair, we should have been given a heads up that that had happened at the time.
Okay, so is that
just a comment?
A comment?
Just a comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. That's taken as a comment or direction. I don't know, timing-wise, if what we receive from the province, should we be sending that information to them? I don't know if
we should be informed.
So should we be sending a letter?
Yeah. They don't get it back to us.
So perhaps the direction is for the chair to send a letter? Or is it just a comment?
It's just a comment. I mean, those on IRAC, we get the updates, but I think the broader council does not. And certainly, we were taken by surprise with changes to the Municipal Act, and would have been helpful if staff given us the summary of the changes before now.
So could staff comment on that?
Or just take it as...
Take it as
advice.
Okay. Okay. Did we move that? I can't remember now.
You didn't, Alan actually proposed. Matt, I think.
A move by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Mayor Crombie. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 6.9 is the appointment of an integrity commissioner and lobbyist registrar, and update on implementation of the lobbyist registry system. Councillor Toby.
Yes, thank you very much. This compliments staff. I think they made a good choice on the integrity commissioner. He's been working at Mississauga, and he's a very, very thorough man. I just was wondering, now that we have a new integrity commissioner and a lobbyist registry, would we be having somebody come to council and give us a little presentation on how this lobbyist registry thing is supposed to work, and get to meet the integrity commissioner at some point?
So, thank you, Councillor Toby. I don't know if staff want to speak to it. I happened to be at the committee because I was there for Councillor Ross. I know Councillor Miles was there. There was a presentation and a training that I believe will be coming to full council.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Toby, seconded by Councillor Ross. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And item 6.10 is a report of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on February 2nd, 2017. Moved by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Starr. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Items of communication, we have Kathy Strank, 7.1, Kathy Strank, Senior Manager and Corporate Secretary at TRCA. Email February 1st regarding provincial review of the Ontario Municipal Board. This is receipt recommended. Moved by Councillor Innes, seconded by Councillor Mahoney. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And item 7.2 is from Minister of Municipal Affairs, Bill Morrow. Letter dated February 2nd regarding coordinated review of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe Greenbelt Plan, Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, and Niagara Escarpment Plan. This is receipt recommended. Moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor McFadden. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And I believe it's back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Items related to Public Works. Councillor Starr, if you chair this section, please.
Okay, the first item is the authorization to hold a public meeting with respect to a market, Ward 7. Can I ask a question on this? I thought we were reviewing this whole area.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, right at the very end of last year, the provincial government changed the legislation that will allow municipalities to set their own criteria. We are looking for that, but it's a pretty involved process. We're going to be coming back to council to discuss the process. Do we want public involvement in that? What kind of public involvement? Because it's one of those situations that is politically charged, shopping on what many people consider religious holidays and so on. So while we're doing that work, we still have applications coming forward under the old rules for council to consider.
So at this point, I've already had 2 inquiries, and I've had, there's a lot of markets, I think, in the central core area. I've had 2 in the past 2 months, and I've suggested they hold off, so maybe they shouldn't be holding off.
No, I would suggest you send them forward to us, and we'll process them as we are currently processing them now while we're working on the much larger policy issue for council. And we will be bringing that policy issue back, I believe, later in the spring of April, May, I believe is the timing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any questions? You're on the board, Councillor Unica.
Thank you, Chair Starr, and I thank the CAO. The staff have been great at working this through, recognizing we have 2 moving targets. And when this one came forward, it was explained to me, and I think David's absolutely right. On the bigger picture, there are a lot of questions surrounding that. And what new holidays will Canada represent and expect, and a lot of variability and we want to go to public consultation. I think we did the right thing and say, but in the interim, we shouldn't be holding folks up. So the 2 points I wanted to make was thank you to you and staff for doing, and Pat, the institution, the entity involved in this instance is in my ward. They are grateful for how staff have handled, they just run their businesses. They don't deal with this stuff normally. And I wanted to commend staff for how the file's been handled and how professional and how understanding they've been in working people through the process, because this is not what they do. They sell groceries and run a tourist type area. So I wanted to commend the staff for how well they've been received and making the process as simple as can be. And with that, I'm happy to move it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Unica, seconded by Councillor Kovac. All in favor? Carried. The extension of the winter maintenance program, 8.2. Any questions, comments? Moved by, Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Just a quick question. I looked at all your options A, B, and C, and I know you're recommending C, but do we have any long-term contracts, 10-year contracts?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from a transportation perspective, the contracts are set to expire. Typically, the longer-term contracts are done for things like winter plowing, or I assume waste management's in a similar boat where you give a contractor an opportunity to sort of finance new equipment over the contract period. And in the longer term, that tends to give you better pricing.
So we do have contracts in winter maintenance and that are 10-year contracts?
No, so historically, we've done them for in that 7 to 10-year range. But right now, the contract that's in place is set to expire at the end of this winter season.
Right.
So if we were going to the market tomorrow and the arterial road rationalization discussions were resolved, we would go out for probably a 7 to 10-year contract.
Okay, and I understand the cost savings and that with the longer term contracts. So when we put those longer term contracts out, I know that the risk that you run is with the penalties that you'd have to pay if you break the contract, but is there not a mechanism that you can put in place when you put these tenders out for these longer term contracts that allows us to get out of it without penalties?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we can structure contracts in that way. But in fairness to a contractor looking at it, they're going to say there is no certainty beyond a period of time, and they'll price that uncertainty into the bid. So when we went, sort of explored the options in terms of how to structure the extension, the feeling was that a short-term extension using existing contractors is the most cost-effective. And when there's a resolution to the arterial road discussions,
Yes.
we'll be in a better position to put out, again, a longer-term contract and realize the benefits of that type of document.
Thank you. I support the report, and Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move the report. Thank you.
Moved. It's been moved, and I have a question also, and I was going to bring it up, and Councilor Groves, you must have been reading my notes here, but I think that maybe the chair and vice chair can meet with staff. I've had several questions asking about the monopoly, and I'll put that directly, of the long-term contracts, and that other companies, say within the region or wherever, can't get in. And because of the length and the locked-in positions, I understand it may be more beneficial, but has a study or has there been any consideration to opening it up?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, it would be nice to talk about it. I haven't heard those comments. And I think
Well, that's because they're afraid to talk to the
the
usual
flavor of the
story. They don't want to upset the cart.
The flavor of the comments that we get are almost the opposite, in that providing a long-term contract gives everybody the opportunity to amortize that equipment over a contract period. So it would be worth exploring, because that sort of intel may help structure future documents.
I think I'd feel the same way if I had those long-term contracts. Anyway, okay, that's moved by Councilor Groves, seconded by Councilor Mahoney. All in favor? Those opposed, carried. The 8.3 is the 2016 Public Works Association Project of the Year. And I think there's some comments, or that I know this was brought forward from a meeting previously.
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I could just make a few quick comments on this. And sort of stepping back, as we know, the construction projects we do in Peel, water, wastewater, transportation, integral to maintaining state of good repair and ensuring that, we're meeting the demands of growth. They're tough projects, and construction's very challenging, especially on an active right-of-way. So, I commend the entire team on all the projects they deliver, but it is it's a real honor to get recognized by an association like the Ontario Public Works Association. This award is for Project of the Year for a structure between $2 million and $10 million. And as you'll see in the report, it was essentially emergency works that came about as a result of inspections on an old MTO culvert related to Beauvais Drive. It used to be Highway 7. Credit to Bob Neuenhausen, who's the manager of the group, and Dan Bennington, who was the project manager, acted quickly and not in isolation, worked very closely with our environmental agencies to deal with, there was fish passage issues and whatnot. Did a fantastic job in delivering it, quickly, improving the environment at the same time. And again, it's a real honor, and I commend them for being able to deliver this project as well as they did.
Very good. The structure itself, from the photographs, it wasn't a heritage structure, was it?
No.
Just want to make sure. Now, last time was this the one that you folks wanted a photo op or something, or not? Was this the one?
Yes.
I'm not sure, because I remember there was some discussion with the chair previously. That's why you held it off. I'm not.
Yeah, the idea
I'm not
here.
looking for a photo, but
No, the idea here, we've got the photo here, we've got a
You have
photographer.
staff?
Yep, we've got our staff, and if you and yourself and Councillor Groves and Councillor Pleshu, I believe is the ward councillor, want to gather, we can take a quick photo and.
okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. computer shut down here. Okay, that was moved and seconded. The Energy Initiative Study for the GE Booth Wastewater Treatment Facility. Ward 1, this is for information. Yeah. Councillor Tovey?
I'm on board.
Yes, that's what I said.
Oh.
Tovey?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank staff for the report. This is actually pretty exciting. We've been actually goes back with Mr. Schiller is also in the audience today. It goes back to a lot of conversations that we've been having over at the GE Booth facility because, of course, I live in very close proximity and I do a lot of tours there, which is really fun. We spend approximately $10.9 million a year on our two wastewater plants. So we had Cole Engineering come in and do a little study for us on the GE Booth plant, and we discovered that, well, actually we can create our own electricity from that and potentially maybe even have additional electricity that we may be able to either use for community district energy at Lakeview or sell back into the grid, or just make sure that, you know, with the rising energy costs that we can reduce that $10.9 million a year down to zero, which would be absolutely fantastic. And it's a really, really good report, so I'd like to thank Anthony Perrante for the report. But I did have sort of one question. So in the report shall include a review of potential third-party hydro agreements in order to fully utilize hydro generation from the potential facility into the grid if and where applicable. And I do understand that there are some policy restrictions that are at the provincial level that are around that. Could you just sort of elaborate on what that is a little bit?
Through the chair, Councillor, thanks for that question. Yes, there's some operating restrictions typically from the local distribution companies that restrict the movement of energy from generation facilities that we have on the water or wastewater side. Typically, it's related to infrastructure or their inability for us to resupply the grid, and it leads to instability. But there are some abilities we believe that we could potentially integrate in with the LDCs, primarily, what's the name of the new EnerSource, to be able to export energy from these facilities. Right now, we look at it as we can only generate so much, but if we exceed what we could use within the plant, then there would be that opportunity. We'd be interested in doing that for sure.
Right, so they want us to produce green energy from our facilities, but they don't want us to sell it to anybody. Is that how it works?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that's the politically correct way of saying things. So I'm happy to move the report, but I'd actually like to add a recommendation to this report, and the recommendation would be that as part of this study, we look at the policies that the provincial government has, try and formulate ideas how we can approach the provincial government about maybe altering some of those policies and have that work shared with the Government Relations Committee. If that's acceptable to everybody, then I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councillor Rass. Is everybody happy with the amendment? Seeing no dissents, all in favor? Carried. The next item is the request for expression of interest for the condition assessment. Any questions? Well, the question I have is, since it basically ends up being a single source, and it's a long term, and I read the report and I understand which way the monitoring is going to. How do you benchmark?
The best way we benchmark we've got 10 years of history of pricing where a good chunk of it was bid competitively when there were two firms, and we try and hold them to that plus CPI, and not much more than that. We've also got pricing from all the other municipalities. But to your point, it's a bit of a seller's market. The idea we want to do is we don't want to make a long-term agreement. We want to go year to year. So if other vendors come into the market, and we're hopeful they will, we'll end up competitive in a couple of years.
So was this invited, the expression of interest, or was it open?
Wide open.
You know, to me, it's so surprising that all the engineering firms that are out there, none of them qualified.
That's a good question. It's not that they didn't qualify. There really only is one firm left in the world that can do it economically. and can do it quickly and can do it in situ without having to do tons of work. We're hoping, they've got patents on a whole bunch of equipment. We're hoping that that will run out in the short term and others will be able to be competitive, develop their own equipment that can compete with it.
So they're the Apple of the sewers.
Correct. And this challenge is faced by municipalities across Ontario, Canada, and down through the U.S.
Well, just, you know.
It's a great question.
I'm sure you're going to be monitoring it, and it certainly, I would think, we should be cautious and look for other sources. I mean,
Agreed.
I personally, I always get bothered when there's always single source and it's longer term and they've got control of the market, whether it's here or Ontario or wherever. And because then it is, as you indicated, a seller's market. So I'm sure you'll do a good job.
We agree with you 100%.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gibson. Are you okay? Oh, you didn't smile. All in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay. The next item is the letter from the minister. Councillor Groves, you're moving that. Seconded by Mayor Crombie. All in favor? Carried. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Brings us to items related to health. Councillor Moore, would you be kind enough to chair this section, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the agenda is 10.1. It's Ontario's dementia strategy. It's an update on local initiatives. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I think this is great, but I think we also need to look at other strategies within the region of Peel. There was an interesting analysis work done on dementia having to do with proximity to highways and the influence on dementia, and our people are shaking their heads, yes. And how it adds to the dementia problem. It actually causes dementia. I'm not sure if it's the air quality around the highways, but I think we have to be thoughtful that we just don't deal with the ramifications of it. We have to actually look at it more comprehensively. Maybe staff would like to comment on that, please.
Dr. Davila?
Yes, if I may make a comment on that through you, Madam Chair. Just to be clear, Councillor Shaughnessy, there was indeed a study that showed an association, not causation yet. And it was it's a study that we're aware of and that we have looked at. And it certainly gives rise to a number of questions. And even the authors themselves suggest that it warrants further investigation, but it does not definitively demonstrate a causative link. So I would agree with you, further investigation is required.
I think that was my point. I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle because we do so much around transportation and widening roads, and I think everybody has to understand the possible effects of it, and I'd love it to see it incorporated somehow.
And Madam Chair, if I can just add one more thing, in the next few weeks at an upcoming council meeting, we will be presenting to council in respect of some of the work that we're doing on air quality. So we do have a number of different initiatives in this regard that I think council will find of interest.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's nice to see that there is some funding being put towards this, but it's basically a drop in the bucket compared to what we need. How many spots are at the behavioral support unit again? Is there 16 or 19? Yeah, there is.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's 19 special behavioral support. In our special behavioral support unit, there are 19 beds or 19 residents.
Will that SBU be one of the beneficiaries of half of this registered nurse?
So this is the 0.5 of the registered nurse is going to be for the entire Sheridan Villa Long-Term Care Center. We already have 0.5, so that will be for 142 residents. Yeah. And this, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, this special behavioral support nurse is to support, to deal with those residents that are most severe with their dementia and with their behaviors. So it's not to take care of the entire group, but those that need the special attention and the most support.
Okay. Is this enough?
I think we know the answer is no, but
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly I will never say it's enough. However, it is a great start. It is a good start. We still have, we're doing advocacy around the dementia strategy with the province through our HISIC committee, so that work continues. This is a great start, and some of the partnerships we're creating with the LHIN, with the local hospitals is helping.
Okay. And we're going to continue to put pressure on the LHINs to get those additional funding resources we require?
Without a doubt.
And hopefully when we have that summit with other agencies asking for our fair share in the spring, that this will certainly be on our priority list as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Raz, would you like to move the recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Gibson. All in favor? That's carried. The next report is the Ontario Student Drug Use and Health Survey, and I'm sure you all followed the link that was sent to you last night and read the 214 pages. I know. There's a presentation on this item this morning. Dr. Davila and Julie Stratton. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, good morning, members of Regional Council. I'm very happy to be here this morning to present with my colleague, Julie Stratton. She's the manager of our Population Health Assessment Team. And seeing that I'm in my last few weeks here at the region, as you know, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you what a gem you have here in this person to my left. She is the manager who oversees what is now called our Population Health Assessment Team, as I've said. By training, she is an epidemiologist and truly one of the finest epidemiologists I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So this is really her presentation. She's the real genius behind this stuff. She's the data whiz. I'm kind of the window dressing. I don't often get to say that, so I'm going to live it up for now and then just move on to the window dressing part of the presentation, which is really just to tell you that this is a presentation about a data source that we use for Peel to get a sense of what's happening with Peel children and youth. Council may remember that we were here in October of 2015. We presented the 2013 survey results. Again, this is the Ontario Student Drug Use and Health Survey results that looks at our Peel children in the grade 7 to grade 12 age range. It is an important survey. It is the longest ongoing survey of elementary and secondary school students in Canada. It is a paper-based delivered or a paper-based survey, and it captures information in what sounds like is captivating nighttime reading, Councillor Moore, on 4 major topic areas: physical health and mental well-being, alcohol use, tobacco use, and drug use, which includes illicit drug use and prescription drug use. As I've mentioned, we participated as Peel in this survey in 2013 and in 2015. We also have opted to participate in 2017 this year in this particular survey. We are here to give you the 2015 results. And just to give you a little bit of context, we're going to go right into the health results. But I should advise you that you'll note in the presentation that we compare Peel's youth to Ontario's youth writ large. Just a couple of points, which I'm sure won't be lost on Council. With respect to our demographics, Peel's population, which applies to our student population, does have a higher proportion of recent immigrants and just immigrants in general relative to Ontario. So that's just a little bit of context. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who is our data whiz.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. Before I begin the slide deck, I would just like to highlight a few points This is only, as Eileen has mentioned, our second year of data collection. And because of that, we only have 2 data points. And at this point, we wouldn't want to highlight any trends at this point because we only have 2 points, although it does provide us some insight into some things that we might want to monitor over time. All right, so let's start off with a question. What percentage of Peel's children are overweight or obese? For body mass index and calculating this, students are asked to state their height and their weight on the survey form, and then this information is used to calculate body mass index. All right, so this slide shows the percent of students within each of the body mass index categories for Peel in Ontario. For Peel, 23% of children are overweight or obese, which is similar to the Ontario rate of 27%. Not shown on the slide is body mass index by sex. In Peel, 27% of males students are overweight or obese compared to only 19% of female students. And we will continue to monitor this trend over 2017. The Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines suggest that for health benefits, youth aged 12 to 17 should accumulate 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity daily. In 2015, overall, 21% of Peel students met the 60-minute daily activity recommendations in the 7 days before the survey. And this is similar to Ontario's rate of 22%. You can also see in this slide that males are more likely to achieve this goal than females, and that students in grade 7 are also more likely to. This slide describes some of the other measures we have in assessing physical and recreational activities. Some points to highlight: 44% of students do not participate in physical activity at school. Only 23% are walking to school. And kids spend a lot of time on screens. For example, using social media or playing video games. In this slide, we can see several of the nutrition indicators collected in the 2015 survey. Just over half of students eat breakfast daily during the school week. Only 15% are eating the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. And approximately 1 in 10 are consuming either sugar-sweetened beverages daily or high-energy caffeinated beverages weekly. In addition, 5% of students reported that they often or always went to bed or school hungry. We have a variety of indicators on mental health well-being that are presented in this slide. The ones that I would like to highlight are the increase between 2013 and 2015 of the proportion of students who are classified as having psychological distress, specifically females. In terms of alcohol use, overall 41% of students have consumed alcohol in the past year, and you can see from this slide that that increases with grade. So what's the most common way students obtain alcohol? This slide shows that the most common source is that they were given it either by a family member or a friend. What is most commonly reported by students in grades 7 to 12? Riding with the driver who'd been drinking alcohol or using drugs? Students were more likely to report being a passenger in a vehicle driven by someone who'd been drinking alcohol at 15% compared to 10% with drugs. What's the most common method for smoking tobacco? Youth are more likely to be smoking e-cigarettes these days, followed by water pipe or hookah. The proportion of students smoking a water pipe has increased slightly since 2013, where it was 11%. Additionally, only 17% of students feel that there's a great risk associated with smoking a water pipe. With regards to marijuana use, 1 in 5 students have used marijuana in the past year. And in 2015, there was a significant increase in the proportion of students trying marijuana for the first time compared to in 2013. In Peel, overall, 37% of students report being exposed to secondhand smoke in the past week, and a higher proportion of those in grades 11 and 12 report being exposed compared to the younger grades. Just over half of students, or sorry, 1/3 of students have tried any type of illicit drugs or over-the-counter drugs in their lifetime. And this slide describes the type of drugs that were included in this estimate to give you a sense of the variety. And what do you think the most common drug used by students is in grades 9 to 12? While the percent using ecstasy is low, it is the most commonly used drug. And since 2013, the proportion of students who have used this drug has increased significantly from 2% in 2013 to 5% in 2015. Again, because we only have 2 data collection points and because it is a survey, we would want to monitor this trend over time. In addition to illicit drugs, students may also use prescription drugs for non-medical purposes. And in 2015, in Peel, 13% of students indicated that they do use prescription drugs for non-medical purposes. The most common form of non-prescription drug is opioid pain relief medications, which includes things such as codeine, hydrocodone, methadone, and fentanyl. Half of students get these medications from family members, so they're probably on the shelves at home.
So with that, that brings to the end our very high-level review of the 2015 Ontario Student Drug Use and Health Survey results. Clearly, as you know, there are a number of areas of concern, but again, with Julie's caution, we do have only 2 data points, and things that have seen an increase in the intervening period between 2013 and 2015 can't yet really be characterized as a trend, but they certainly suggest that there are areas that require ongoing monitoring. I think, as listed on this slide as well, there are clearly opportunities for us as the local public health department, through our school health program in particular, to work with our school board partners and other community stakeholders to ensure that we're doing the best we can to both protect and promote the health of the youngest people or young people in our communities. As I mentioned, we are actually participating in the 2017 iteration of this particular survey, and if it's council's interest and wish, we would be very happy to come back and present the findings once that survey is completed and the analysis is done as well. In the meantime, as Councillor Moore pointed out, the full reports in respect of this particular 2015 iteration of the survey that has been sent out to all of Council, and we of course would be happy to take any questions that you might have at this time or in the future.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple speakers on the board. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for the presentation. Great presentation, and certainly it's of interest to me because I do have a child who's 15 years old and is in that grade 7 to 12 category. It's a little bit frightening, actually, to see the increase in some of these uses, alcohol, some of the other substances that these children are trying. And one of the things, I guess, that I always found really concerning is the, it's a number of things. So a couple of questions. A sleeping disorder, is there anything that you can tell me why you're finding that there's sleeping disorders with these children? Like, is it, what's the main cause of a main reason why you're finding that? Because if you don't get enough sleep, it certainly affects their well-being overall. It affects, I think, their abilities to function in school and certainly how their diet, their nutrition, and it just sort of snowballs into something that's not great. So what did you find that is the main cause or reason why these kids are not getting enough sleep?
We've only at this point done a high-level overview of sort of the frequency, the burden of the problem, and we can explore associations and relationships with other outcomes as additional pieces of work to this initial launch of the report.
I think it would be interesting to know that and to maybe look at that a little closer because, again, not enough sleep certainly causes a lot of, it creates anxiety, depression, and all of those things that lead to other things that's not really great. The other thing that I want to touch on is the obesity because again, that becomes a huge problem for especially teenagers. It's difficult for them because they're under so much peer pressure with other things that I remember we were running years ago, Public Health ran an ad and we thought, no way, can't put that out there. It was a young girl looking in the mirror and with a tape measure around her waist, and it's not a good message that we were sending out there that, it's okay to be skinny, but if you're a little bit overweight, that's not okay. So, that's something that, and I know parents were always working and sometimes may not have time to prepare proper meals and that, so we're always on the go, and then it's fast food and everything else. So I would certainly welcome another report in 2017 to see whether or not we're able to bring those things, to reduce some of these things, the substance abuse, the sleeping disorder, the overweight or obesity, because all of those things I think is really what's playing a role in some of the behavior that we're seeing with children, teenagers. They don't want to talk to parents sometimes. They don't want to talk to a professional. They say, well, why would I talk to a stranger? So they talk to each other, and they can't advise each other. So I don't have a solution. I certainly hear it from a lot of the youth that I talk to. They don't want to talk to anyone because they don't feel comfortable. How we get them there, I don't know. But I know that there's a real concern. And I know in my community, in the Bolton community, there's a real concern. We don't have ways for them to get out and do things because we have no public transportation. Mom and dad, we have to drive them. And so it becomes a problem. So I'm just going to put it out there to see how we do this, how we get them to talking to somebody. Maybe it's through the schools, I don't know, through the chaplains, through the guidance counselors, I don't know.
So through you, Madam Chair, just to address the range of questions that you've raised, Councillor Groves, as Julie rightfully pointed out, this survey actually gives us a sense as to what the problems are and this, the significance or the size and scope of the problems. But it doesn't necessarily give us a sense as to how then to address that. That actually has to come through other avenues of research. And then what we can do is start to consider what interventions might work based on that which has worked in other jurisdictions that have similar circumstances to us and that which the literature tells us might actually have some effect. Different kinds of surveys would actually have to be conducted with students to get deeper into why or what are the rationales and reasons behind some of the choices that they make. And then we can actually engage in interventions and determine whether we're getting the desired effect. But I do think that this survey is largely around what are the issues and how significant are they in terms of size, but they don't actually give us a sense as to and what's behind it.
Right, right. I know Mayor Thompson is hosting a youth forum in May, and maybe that's an opportunity. I don't know. You can speak to the mayor after if there's an opportunity to have you there or someone from staff there to have some information, because I think you're having about 300. Okay, great, because there's an opportunity to reach these kids and to maybe just hand them some literature so that they can look at it, something that's very simple, that they know that there's places they can go for help and that sort of thing. So thank you, and I certainly look forward to the next one that you do, because I think this is really important, especially to us who are parents of teenagers and some of us whose children are getting to that point. They're not quite there yet, but they're getting there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Groves. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Villa and Julie, for the presentation. I guess being a mom of two girls, one in grade 7, one in grade 4, that it's alarming, to say the least. And I don't know, growing up, I still remember that commercial, this is your brain, and this is your brain on drugs with the Friday. I mean, it's stuck. And kids get, they're on Netflix, they go, straight to YouTube. They don't get those public safety or public health ads that we used to as kids. And I'm a good little soldier in that department. But I guess looking forward, the grades 7 to 12, we don't track them after the fact, so we don't know if there was something that they were experimenting with and have gone on to become, solid citizens and have not, haven't turned a recreational or experimental drug use into something that's more serious. And the other part is the obesity one. What happens to those children who are identified as being obese fairly early on? Do they become, obese adults? And I know we don't have that data yet, but that's probably something, we hopefully need to track because of the strains on the healthcare system going forward. So that's really just a comment. I don't expect you to address that. But I think that having those two data points, and I know you can't really read into too much of the trends, but I think there's enough there to say this is becoming a problem, especially on the drug use. And I know in Ottawa over the last few days there's been a call from parents to say we need to do something more. We need to have the conversation with our kids, and I'm just wondering how we can help facilitate that.
So, in fact, I would say that a number of those conversations are already happening. And as you can see through the work that we're planning to do with our school boards, drug use, mental health issues, all the things that were identified as potential areas of concern that clearly need monitoring are areas that we're working with our school board partners and with community partners on. I don't know that we have definitive answers yet. We don't have all the solutions. We're actually still very much characterizing the problem. With respect to an earlier comment that you made on the drug use and what happens on the go-forward basis, I don't know that I can say how much becomes, what proportion of these kids are just experimenting and how many go on to become more problematic drug users, as it were. However, as I understand it, in coming up, we've got a report just after this one with respect to cannabis and the federal government's role in legislation and regulation. My understanding is that from federal statistics, 40% of the Canadian population aged 18 to 35 use cannabis. They don't say with what degree of regularity. I think those are all users, as it were. So there is a significant proportion of drug use in our country writ large. It's not just in Peel. What the Peel specific solutions will be, I think, are very much still in development, as they are in many other jurisdictions.
And I think sounding or listening to some recent media reports, the manufactured drugs like the carfentanil and the meth, that's basically putting, you have no idea what chemical you're putting in your body and what you're putting at risk, whereas cannabis, there's a certain degree of certainty that you're basically smoking a natural product, which I know has probably full of pesticides. But I think that's the unknown about what people are consuming on the manufactured drug side is probably the most worrisome. So.
Yes, and I would argue that people may think they're consuming. I mean, if you're in the illicit drug trade, you're never really sure what you're getting. Right? So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. Does the school board cooperate with Peel Health in any programs that you may like to introduce into the school system, or is that something that is not guaranteed?
So through you, Madam Chair, we actually have a partnership agreement that is signed and, on the wall in my office and also in the two large school boards, the Peel District School Board and the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board. And we agree on certain areas that we feel are of importance to our kids. So for the next few years, our key areas of focus, they're not our exclusive areas of focus, but that which was agreed to in our partnership agreement focuses on optimizing physical activity, optimizing opportunities for healthy eating, and optimizing mental health and mental health promotion, mental well-being. So they are very valued partners of ours.
And that's great to hear, because I believe that education is really the key, is in educating the youth. Probably a lot of kids are influenced by their peers into trying drugs or smoking or other activities. And I believe that if we can educate the children when they're at a young age, they learn. If you go to them once they're in high school or later in grade schools, they're probably too late. But I, from my experience, if you teach them at a young age, they tend to listen and they tend to learn. So I think it's really important that we have to work on education and teaching, trying to keep kids from going that route, and also trying to teach them the importance of activity. Actually, my great 8 grandson, they did his speech on activity and did very well. He was so proud, and he's a gymnast, so he speaks from experience. And so I believe that education is really important. So if we can really work on that, it would work. Thank you.
So if I may, Madam Chair, I would agree with you, Councillor Spurvieri, but I think the education is even more powerful when it takes place in an environment that actually facilitates those good behaviors, the healthy behaviors.
Thank you. Councillor Fonseca.
Chair. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think tracking it and having a made-in-Peel solution is extremely important. But at the same time, and has been noted, you've noted, there is a crisis across the country when it comes to these, as Councillor Ross was saying, these synthetic drugs that we don't really know necessarily what's in them. And youth they have them available. They're available either at home or they're available out out on the street, or they're available over the counter. There's a whole combination that it's hard to get a handle on. But just following up on the call to action that came from a parent from Ottawa and with his daughter, one of the things I was listening to the CBC, there was a number of call-ins. There was a show on, I can't remember which day it was this week, but it was time with that call to action. One of the things that came up, and it's noted in the data here, is that yes, youth don't feel they have someone to talk to. That's clear. They don't feel they can talk to someone. But when at the timing of when they do feel they can, the service is not there. So there's a number of parents who are on CBC who said one of the frustrations is definitely the youth aren't necessarily coming forward to say there is an issue, but when they do come forward to their family member or somebody in the school, there's a frustration in how to navigate the system on how to actually get access to that mental health support or medical support that they need. So in terms of the timing of the interventions of when to support or provide supports to residents, do we have programs available in Peel? Are we experiencing the same wait lists that are feeling across that others are feeling across the across the country, in terms of timing of supports that would be provided? That came up as, if there's one thing that we would ask for, it would be, rather than being told my son or daughter or family member has to be put on a waiting list for this program to help them, it would be good if we could access it right now, because the person needs those supports right now and here and now.
So through you, Madam Chair, this is a very, very challenging issue, and it's certainly not unique to Peel. If memory serves me correctly, we had a pretty significant discussion at a Health System Integration Committee in the fall around the mental health system. And in fact, we focused a lot on the need for better resourcing for treatment, particularly in that moment of crisis. And I believe there was a map that was presented of the mental health care system, actually the mental health system, focusing largely on the care piece. And it is very, very convoluted. And it's especially complicated, I would suggest, for children and youth, because there's a completely different stream for adult mental health and for children and youth. So it is extremely challenging. And as I understand it, and I will defer to Madam Chair on this one, I think that that's part of an advocacy strategy that's being worked on to ensure that we're getting better access to resources that are desperately needed in that regard.
Thank you.
Councillor Tovey.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the report. It's it's actually pretty disheartening. It's a very disheartening report. But I just wanted to go over the mental well-being piece on 10.2.3. So 37% of students classified as having moderate to high levels of psychological distress. 14% of students have seriously considered suicide in the last year. 21% reported visiting a mental health provider, and 32% report that they do not know who to turn to. So that's just sort of a segue into it. So I have a little bit of a question first. So my understanding is that with marijuana, you can't become physically addicted to marijuana. You can become habituated to it, but not actually physically addicted to it, whereas the opioids and the methadrines and all that sort of stuff are highly physically addicting. Is that more or less it?
So I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure that whether it's habituated or psychologically dependent versus physiologically dependent, if at the end of the day it becomes something that you depend on, I'm not sure that the difference is all that germane at the end of the day, if that makes any sense. If you're actually seeking out the product, whether you're physiologically doing so and or psychologically doing so, you're still looking out for the product, and you're effectively dependent on it.
Right, but technically you cannot get physically addicted to marijuana. You can become mentally habituated to it, my understanding is, but physically, I mean, it's not like you're going to die in withdrawal if you.
Yes.
Whereas if you're taking some serious opioids, you could actually die during withdrawal.
Yes.
Right. So that to me is a difference, and I think that's where I'm very, very concerned about. When you see the expansion of things like ecstasy and the opioids and all of that. And the interesting thing about it from my research is that, you know, the opioids basically, they just deaden your senses completely. And then, of course, on the other hand, the ecstasies and the methadrines make you feel like Superman, apparently. So that goes back to the mental health issue, which to me is, you know, I mean, I grew up in the 60s, so I know a little bit about drugs. But I've always noticed that if somebody's we won't go there. If somebody's a happy, self-assured person who has a purpose in life, they don't do drugs. They don't do drugs. They're too happy getting stuff done. So I guess as the three ladies that were here this morning, this is sort of what got me thinking about this, because you have these three wonderful ladies who are clearly working their tails off to get ahead in life, and yet you can tell that they're starting to lose hope. So how do we address that piece? How do we get these kids to feel like they have hope? How do we get them to feel like they have purpose? Because that's, I think, how we get them. They wouldn't even want to do drugs at that point. How do we do that?
Were you expecting an answer?
Yeah, just like that. But what are we doing about that? You know, what can we possibly do to address? Because I think really, to me, that's the bottom line. As soon as someone doesn't have hope in life, that's when they'll do crazy things.
So without getting into, you know, a very long treatise on this, for starters, from a mental health perspective, we are actually partnering with schools and trying to look at what evidence there is for what interventions might actually work in that kind of setting to help ensure that we're promoting good mental health amongst kids. Treatment for mental illness is a separate issue, and I think that once you get to a certain point in terms of ill mental health and into mental illness, you need to go down a different stream. However, there is a preventive aspect, and this is what public health is actually all about, right? Population level interventions that actually promote and help people maintain good health. So to the extent that we can partner with our school boards on what works in terms of mental health promotion in our schools, we're doing that. But I would suggest to you as well that much of the work that we're undertaking in conjunction with folks from your local municipalities and with our colleagues here in Public Works and Planning has to do with building healthy communities. And when we talk about healthy communities, we often refer to notions around diabetes and physical activity and, you know, making sure that we're walkable, transit-friendly, etc. These are all important things for physical health, but I would argue that they're also important for mental health. Creating healthy communities that actually give you a sense of place, a sense of community belonging, is part of a healthy community. It's not just about looking at diabetes and physical activity and increasing walkability. Those are the parts that seem to get a lot of attention, but it's not exclusively about that. There is a mental health component to that as well. So at a high level, creating environments that actually support good health writ large don't just support physical health, they support mental health as well.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted. So really, a lot of it's really a matter of good planning.
It is significant. And I would argue that my colleagues in Human Services, as you've alluded to, also play a significant role in terms of ensuring that those who are more vulnerable in our communities feel that they're supported by those of us who are in better off condition.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Parrish.
Well, I think that's, I don't know what the solution is, but I know what caused a lot of this, or I think I do. When we dropped secondary school to 4 years, and we dropped the number of credits of phys ed that kids needed, the 23% that were overweight immediately dropped phys ed. When they dropped phys ed, they also dropped the health component of it, which was educational, taught kids the fried egg syndrome and used all those movies, and always hated teaching it, but we did. I think the problem is you got two parents working now, so you get home from school, there's nobody there. There's no guidance counselors at school that want to talk to you about anything but your career path because they don't have time to do personal consultations. And the system sucks. And it's keeping me on my little tangent about the province needing to smarten up. The schools are underfunded terribly, and they're under-resourced, and they're taking shortcuts directed by the province to cut out a year of high school so they save all those millions of dollars, hundreds of millions. So you're pounding your heads against a brick wall because it's really not our job. It should be back into the school system. And I don't know how we make that happen. I just know kids were a lot healthier when I was a high school teacher years ago, in the 70s. And we had a kid who shall remain unnamed who went on to be extremely famous, inventing computers and all kinds of other things. And he was a very creative guy, and he did this insane essay in my class, and I read it, and it was all about how he'd commit suicide and how it would feel. So I sent it down to the guidance office right away. Turned out he was just razzing me, and he was a smart guy, and he was funny as hell, and he just thought he'd caused quite a stir. But I would guess today if some kid did that, who would you send them to? There's no guidance counselors. So it's I don't know, it's very depressing, and I'm lucky. Two of my grandkids live in a place where they just run all day. They're in the country. They're both mildly insane. And they take after their grandmother. And the other three are all in hockey and doing stuff like that. But the parents have a bigger burden than they did when I had kids, because I knew when my kids went to school, they had phys ed, they had health classes, they were taught what's right and what's wrong with putting stuff in your body. So whether they took the advice or not, at least they were getting it. So I don't know if it's our problem or if it's the school board's problem or if it's the province's problem. I choose the province because I'm on a tear with them. But it's really sad. And we got a whole generation of kids. Plus, we're in the third generation of people. I was a teenager. Actually, no, I was a high school teacher when marijuana became a big thing. And so we're now in a third generation of adults or kids that marijuana is becoming very commonplace. And it's like, sure, no problem. So we're making progress in society in a lot of directions, but we're going way backwards in the ones where they matter and you produce healthy kids. So that's my rant for today.
And a predictable rent it was.
Sorry.
No, I'm just, it's a strong message in terms of the educational system needs to be our partner in this, and the province as well. It is around curriculum. It is around what we require our children to participate in school as mandatory, and making phys ed not mandatory is not a good decision. So, there we go. Maybe we'll bring that up at the forum. So I need someone to move and second the report. Councillor Raz, Councillor Parrish, all those in favor, that's carried. Thank you. The next report is the cannabis legislation and potential implications to public health, and we kind of covered that. It is just an information report. There's no recommendation attached to it. Would someone like to move it? Councillor Raz.
Just a quick comment before, should this ever be legalized, before the province or the feds ever get their hands on any tax monies from the sale of cannabis, then I believe we need to lobby hard and lobby now so that any tax revenues from the sale of cannabis should come direct to the region so we can manage all of those issues related to policing and health that we're going to be dealing with eventually. So I don't know how we can get that done, but maybe we can, provide direction to staff on that.
I think that would be most appropriate, whether it's, I think direction is fine. I don't think we need a formal motion, but you look like you would like to say something, Dr. Davila.
So, through you, Madam Chair, just thinking through, so from what I've understood, there was a recent consultation held. MP Bill Blair was in Brampton recently speaking on this subject. My understanding is that the federal government will be moving relatively shortly on this subject. There will require some provincial regulation. That's what it sounds like. It will be a federal framework and provincial legislation thereafter, somewhat akin to what we see for alcohol in throughout Canada. With respect to where the enforcement dollars come, I'm happy to try and take that up. I'm not sure whether that's necessarily a public health area, but I'd be happy to discuss with our solicitor and with those within the local municipalities, presumably bylaw enforcement and or our police colleagues as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I do believe that there are going to be a lot of either increased or new issues that we haven't previously dealt with if it's going on a much broader scale, and we're going to need the resources to deal with it. So before it goes into anybody else's pockets, we're going to need to recoup some of those funds. So, yep. So anyways, I will just leave it with that.
It's a good point, Councillor Raz. We haven't talked about that piece of it, I don't believe. Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. One of the issues that we have been grappling with in the city of Brampton is the fact that there are legal marijuana grow operations happening within residential communities. So in cases, the neighbor next door actually has a license to grow marijuana within their home. And it's a huge concern for the municipality, for the police department, the fire department. I think children are being raised in homes where marijuana is being grown and used, and even the ramifications of having a legal grow operation in a residential house. When that house goes for sale, may not be identified as having been a grow operation. So many health, safety, and crime concerns that we need to be dealing with at the municipal level. I know the city of Mississauga do have a bylaw, but it pertains to commercial grow ops outside of the residential community. But if you look further, you're going to find that there are actually legal grow operations happening in residential communities, and it's something that I know we in the city of Brampton are trying to get our minds around, but something that certainly all municipalities should be aware of, because even though they're legal, there is not the the inspectors for those grow operations are very few. So we have lots of concerns in our city about that.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. Actually, Mississauga, we do have a bylaw that we put in place with Peel Regional Police many years ago when we were dealing with the many, numerous illegal grow-ops in houses, which gives Peel Regional Police more support and security in our bylaw officers to both access the homes and deal with the ensuing problems that occur when there is a grow-up, and the mold that's in the home, the safety of the neighbors because of the fire risk, the bypassing the hydro. So we put in place some years ago very extensive bylaw that it has been working. You know, it's still a problem, and probably should be reviewed for dealing with the more legal aspects of it. Councillor Rouse had raised the issue with the funding for the police. It was interesting. I was in Colorado at the International Crime Prevention Conference in September, and in Colorado it is legal to buy, sell, and use even on the streets in the towns. And it was interesting. I thought a sweet shop was a pastry shop. It wasn't. They have some really unique names in some of the towns. A little bit of naivety here, but it's rather interesting because in the U.S., where the states have legalized marijuana, they cannot collect federal taxes on it because there is a law in the United States that that the government cannot profit from the sale of drugs. So the employees who work in the shops, those that grow, sell, whatever, don't pay any federal income tax. They pay state tax, but the federal government cannot deal with tax. So everything is cash. You can only buy it with cash. You have to pay your employees with cash. They have to buy the marijuana supplies with cash. It was quite unique. It was very unique. You kind of wonder where the checks and balances are, but that happens to be the law there. So obviously the federal government in Canada is not going to do that because they want to make money off it as well. There was an interesting presentation by the police on the implications on policing with the legalized marijuana. And we had several of our crime prevention officers from Peel Regional Police were at the conference as well. And I know that at least one or two of them did sit in on that session. So, you know, you can learn a lot from places that have gone through this. And I didn't make it into that session, but I knew the officers were there. So I think it would be interesting to get the perspective from Peel Regional Police, from the research they have done, and how they see it unfolding as the government moves forward on this. But again, I doubt that that the government, the federal and provincial government, plan on giving us any money. When we were looking at casinos, we were told very clearly that there would be no additional funding coming to the municipality to do policing around the casino if we had one in the city of Mississauga, and we had a huge session on that. So, you know, we can take all the problems, but we don't get any of the so-called benefits.
Okay. We've kind of taken a wide berth from an information report on cannabis, but, so I'll ask Councillor Groves if you could
Keep it
speak to
short.
the report.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And the report speaks to a lot of the health concerns with respect to the legalization, but I don't see anything about how we enforce it. I know that we have MAD, Mothers Against Drinking and Driving. So I don't know what mechanism the police will have to determine somebody who just smoked marijuana and they're driving a car. It's just as bad as, probably worse than drinking and driving. So that's a concern for me. I don't know, maybe that's something that your department can work with the police to come up with some answers, because that's a problem. And I don't know what's being done or if that's even being considered or looked at. So I'll just put that out there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to extend the discussion by much, but there is an answer to that question.
Okay.
So again, through that consultation that happened recently, as I understand it, MP Bill Blair did talk about new technologies that are actively being tested now, that are rapid testing methodologies, so whether it's body fluids, saliva, urine, that can actually test for the presence of cannabinoids. And this is the kind of technology that they're actually exploring at this stage of the game in order to address those concerns. Just further to the other points that were raised, at the recent consultation, concerns around enforcement were raised to MP Blair and to MP Cara, who was the host of the consultation session. And they were received and noted, but I think at the end of the day, what specifically will be required, whether it's from bylaw enforcement or otherwise, our regional police partners, will actually rest on what the specifics of the legislation look like. It's very difficult to determine what kind of impact there might be until we know specifically what the circumstances and the regulations are going to look like.
Saliva might be a way, because pulling somebody over on the side of the road and asking them to pee in a bottle, I
Yes.
don't know about that.
Yeah,
but-
no, that
Yeah.
may not be the most optimal method, but, you know, there are apparently technologies that are being looked at. At a very high level, it was spoken to at the consultation, and the details weren't really provided at that session.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize, Dr. Davila. I know I tried to convince the kids I had eyes in the back of my head, but I wasn't aware that you needed, that you were prepared to respond. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the report. Councillor Groves, Councillor Miles, all those in favor? That's carried. That's it. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Items related to human services. Councillor Downey, if you chair this section, please.
Item 11.1, Peel Housing Service Manager's Response to the 20,000 Homes Campaign. Any speakers? Oh, can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Pleshy, seconded by Councillor Fonseca. And item 11.2, Conversion of Commercial Space through Residential Units. Councillor Groves.
Thank you. Through you to staff. I read the report. I don't quite understand it, so maybe I can get some clarification, and I'd hate to be the one to stand in the way of providing more affordable units for seniors, because we certainly know that we're lacking in that area. So I don't want to be, I don't want it to look like I'm standing in the way of having more units for seniors, but I guess maybe I just need somebody to explain to me, because there's funding that's available, as I read the report, somewhere in upwards of $4 million, and I would certainly not be one to also stand in the way of getting funding to provide these units. But as I understand it, this project is very new, and I just wondered why we're going down the road of conversion when we really haven't given it an opportunity to, evolve. So I don't have an answer. I'm just looking for some clarification.
Through you, Madam Chair. As you are aware, we do have a request for proposal process that we are working through, but unfortunately, the timeframes of the proposals that we are receiving do not meet the provincial deadlines for funding. And this is a common problem across the province with all service managers. As we get closer to the year end for the ministry, there's a lot of trading that's facilitated by the ministries going on between service managers in terms of funding. We did receive interest from SHIP in terms of this proposal. We received it rather late, and now we find ourselves constrained by deadlines. in terms of having to have a contribution agreement signed by the end of February. So you see before you a proposal to convert some commercial space into 27 residential units for seniors on the waiting list.
Right. So is there an opportunity to look elsewhere and to get that agreement and get the money and look somewhere else to provide these units somewhere else? Because my understanding is that this building, it was sort of that concept, live work concept that was that they asked that the city provides, and they've done so, but is there an opportunity to get the money and look at providing units somewhere else for these seniors?
Through you, Madam Chair. So again, we are constrained by timeframes in terms of this proposal coming to us relatively late. We have confirmed with the ministry that there is not an opportunity to flow these funds forward into another year. There is an opportunity to tweak this proposal, but we would need approval for it today, in principle, in order to secure the provincial funding.
How would you tweak it?
Should council so wish, we could go back to SHIP and ask them to continue negotiations on the cost of the units.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Groves. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I really want to support this recommendation, but I have a lot of problems with it. First of all, I hate making a decision when the clock is ticking and the end of the month is a few days away. And so there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for us to really do the kind of negotiation and working with SHIP that we'd like to do. And I accept that staff believe we can sign the agreement and do that work afterwards. But here's my problem. This building is located on the Queen Street corridor, where we have a vision of mixed use. And in fact, when the building was approved, having the main floor as commercial and then 2 floors of office above that, with the residential, it's a beautiful building. I don't believe that there's been enough effort put into the part of whether it's SHIP or Martin Way to actually lease up this space. Just last month, the City of Brampton approved a project that is 1 property away from this. It's a 7-story medical building to be constructed there. This is in our hospital precinct, where I think high-quality office space is going to be very much sought after. And I have a huge problem with $335,000 per unit for 27 units. We got a briefing report from our staff at the City of Brampton last night. And while it's not a lot of jobs that would be displaced by putting in 27 residential units for seniors, it is projected to be 70 jobs. So while we do need to provide housing, we still continue to have one of the highest unemployment rates in the province. So we need jobs in our city as well. So I have a problem with this. I hate to turn down the provincial funding. We have been successful in the past in working with our provincial partner to recognize projects but first of all, the need in the community. And, because we have had a great reputation in terms of delivering units, they have been a willing partner at the table to have the kind of conversations that we need. So this, for me, is a real struggle. My regional hat says 27 seniors units. My city hat says our major economic corridor in the City of Brampton, where we're encouraging mixed use, where we need jobs, where it's in the middle of a health precinct that is going to really transform this part of the world from Centre Street to the 410. So I have some problem. And it's nothing that I didn't share with the commissioner yesterday, but, I was hoping that overnight and having slept on it, that I might see the world a little bit differently. But unless my colleagues can convince me, I don't think I'll be supporting this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Parrish.
I feel like I took a grumpy pill this morning. 3 ladies come in, and they do a glitzy presentation, and you're all tripping over yourselves to give them money so that they can invest in 5 years, make $200,000 and go to a bigger house. Here you've got an opportunity to take probably 50, if you get couples, people off the wait list, seniors who are at the end of the road and can't go out and buy a new house or do anything like that. And we're fighting it. It's very innovative. Maybe SHIP should have come and done a flashy presentation, and we'd have all been falling all over ourselves going, wow, this is innovative. If the top floor of that building was fully, if it was usable, there'd be tenants in it. There'd be things happening there right now. One of the things you have to do with housing is you tuck it into little slots, and you keep it spread all out, and you don't pile it all into one place. If you were building this brand new, these units, it would be double that. No, it's not brand new. It's on the top of a foundation that's already there.
Maybe we could get some clarification
Yeah,
from
could
our
somebody explain that?
Commissioner.
Through the chair, it is the conversion of second floor commercial space.
Correct. So the base is there under it. You're not building foundations. You're not putting in new pipes. None of these things.
We are not putting in new pipes, but I should highlight that there is significant work that needs to be underdone to convert the commercial to the residential.
No, I understand
Okay.
that. That's why you're asking for as much money as you are. A lot of this is provincial money. If we keep saying no to these projects, the province is going to start telling us we're going to take our money elsewhere. This is a perfectly good project. And I think we should, if you can't pass it today, we should defer it and get SHIP to come in with some razzle-dazzle films and maybe a few sad seniors that they could cry for us. Come on, guys. What the heck?
Any more today? Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Councillor Pleshy.
I won't be as grumpy as Councillor Parrish, but I am going to speak along some stuff along the same lines.
Good.
The demolition costs on this, let's take a step back. So SHIP was supposed to occupy the commercial space of this building, and that couldn't happen. Now we're here at the, like Councillor Moore had indicated, in the 11th hour with something that we have to pull the trigger on. And if you don't, you have to pull the trigger on this. It's unfortunate that the pricing is so high, but maybe we should waive the DCs, just like we did with Holland Christian Homes. And then that'll bring it down to a more palatable level, say around maybe $215 per unit or something like that. But we did it for Holland Christian Homes. Why can't we do it now? If you want the per unit price down a little bit. The problem is that we weren't, Martin Way has always been a very good partner of the Region of Peel in the past. And you look at it from their perspective, and they took a chance on building a building and having the 2 floors commercial. In 1 floor they've rented it out to retail space. In 1 floor they had somewhat of a handshake deal to get SHIP in there. SHIP couldn't do what they wanted to do, and of course they still want to do it, but they couldn't make ends meet. And Martin Way's continued to try and lease out this space for the last, almost a year. But at no time were we there to say, well, right off the bat, we should have maybe indicated that we would have done something like this here today. Though these costs would have been a lot cheaper if we were at the table there when the trades were still in the building. But the trades are gone now. So to bring them all back now, it's going to cost a lot more money. Plus, you've converted it to commercial, and so now there's demolition costs. It's unfortunate that, and this is typical government, we waste so much money with stuff like this, where we weren't at the table with a partner that's probably been sitting there saying, come to the table and talk to us, and let's try and do something here the whole time. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't know how you can't support this now today. It's the right thing to do. I completely understand with, I put my city hat on too, and yeah, would we like employment here? Absolutely. We got an Atlas building, beautiful Atlas building. It's the start of a section that's in Brampton that's going to be fantastic soon. But unfortunately, we're too late.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nobody said it was going to be easy, and I think Councillor Moore expressed that. I look at it this way. I kind of feel like I was tricked. If this was a developer coming in, and not SHIP, just a developer, and we approved something in a growth area that Brampton is looking at, and then in a short period of time, which is a short period of time, this is, Councillor Parrish, this is a new building, and all of a sudden they came back to us and said, well, we know we agreed that we were going to put 2 floors of commercial, but now we don't want to do that anymore. I know at Brampton what we'd say. So it's tough. It really is a tough decision to make. But I agree with Councillor Moore. I'm not sure enough time has gone by to test the waters on that space. At the same time, we want to create some housing units too, but this is the future of Brampton, this whole area. If we did this every time somebody came in with a sob story, we'd be in big trouble. And I think Mississauga and Caledon do the same thing if it was just a developer and it wasn't SHIP. So it's not an easy decision to make, as Councillor Moore said, but we get paid to make tough decisions sometimes. And to you, Councillor Parrish, I think you spoke against the 3 women that were there this morning. So don't throw that 3 women stuff at us when you were supposed, as you said, that was a tough thing to go through. And so was this. So this isn't, the councillor of the area isn't here, but Councillor Moore and I represent the other side of the street here, and I know what we want along that corridor. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Spovieri?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And, this is, I remember when we approved this project many years ago, it was actually one of the councillors who proposed the 2 floors of commercial in the project. I don't know whether there was ever any, it was your dad actually, that we thought that we could make it work, but I don't believe that there was ever any actual studies done as to whether it was practical or not. I think it was just a nice thing to think about, having some commercial in the building, but I believe the main floor is still vacant. I don't think that even the main floor has been leased. When I drive by, I see the main floor is still unoccupied. As the Mattamy building just on Kennedy is also fairly empty too. So I don't know whether this mix is really is appropriate for this building. Having 2 floors of commercial, I don't know if there was ever any studies that was done by staff to look at whether it was practical or not. But I understand that we want to bring some commercial, but I don't know whether this is the right mix in this kind of building, and I don't know whether staff is the planning staff's here that could give us a bit of an indication, but. I think it's really important that we have to look at this very carefully at this time, because there's an opportunity to get some funding from the province to make this conversion, and if we miss out on it, then we could end up with this 2nd floor empty for a long, long time. So, I tend to, I think if there was a demand for that commercial, I'm sure the owners would have loved to have made that happen by now. And I don't know whether really there's a market for it in this building. So I'm really torn on this one. And but I think given the nature of the building, that it is mostly a residential building, it's probably the wise thing to do is to grab the funding that's available and do the conversion. And there's if there are commercial people interested in developing commercial along that strip, there's a lot of opportunities for that to happen. So I think in this case, I'm going to support the mover to the staff report and grab the funding that's available. And it's a tough one, but I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spilvieri. Councillor Miles.
So you're going to have to help me, Janice, with the report. This is granting a regional forgivable loan agreement with SHIP in the amount of $5,094,725 from a reserve account. So are those dollars that came from the tax base, or dollars that came from other provincial allocations?
Through the chair, the $5 million is regional funding for this project, and just under $4 million would be provincial funding.
Okay, so we're basically paying 60% and then 40% from the province. So in the report, it says that the per unit cost at $335,200 are higher than traditional new construction. So what we're being told here is it's going to be more money to convert existing space than it would be to build brand new.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It is more expensive in this case to do the conversion because there's quite a bit of work required to take the space from commercial to residential.
Sorry, but I'm having real problems with this as well. So we're going to take $6 million from our tax base so that we can utilize $4 million from the provincial allocation, and we're going to pay to convert a commercial space, which Brampton believes should stay a commercial space, in order to pay more for the construction to provide housing for 27 units. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm trying to work my way through this, and there's nothing I would like to see us do more than build housing or have housing for seniors. But the dollars here, they are not making any sense. I mean, SHIP wanted to move in here and have the second floor as their main headquarters. Would we not be better at looking at, if we're going to look for some kind of support? I mean, one of the big issues that we have in the region of Peel is providing housing and support for individuals with some kind of mental, is mental illness?
Supportive housing.
Yeah. Who needs supportive housing with the supports? So rather than looking at converting the commercial space to units at a cost greater than what we could build them brand new, why aren't we looking at helping SHIP to actually do the move and have a centralized commercial space to provide the supports that they're going to need to provide anyway? So question number one, through you to the Commissioner, can we use any of the funding, the funding that's available to do something like that?
So through the chair, if your intent was to try to create units of supportive housing, we would be needing to match those operating dollars with the Ministry of Health. And we're not in a position this late in the year to be able to try to negotiate those additional supportive housing dollars. So SHIP has focused on the wait list and seniors in terms of the clientele. And if I may, I just would like to clarify one point. I know that there are many issues being raised about this project, but again, if cost was the primary consideration, we do have the opportunity to go back to SHIP, approve the report, and tell them that they need to negotiate a lower per capital cost in order to have the project approved. But I do recognize that there are other issues.
That doesn't address my question about trying to provide the opportunity for SHIP to actually come in and vacate the commercial space. Mr. Swark, you have a frown between your eyes.
Just a question, Councillor Miles. Are you asking, do we have funding that can help SHIP move in and use that space as commercial space for its offices?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll refer back to the Commissioner, but I don't believe we can use the housing funding to assist the agency use the commercial space. And my understanding is they haven't moved into that space because they can't afford to.
So, but the question is we're spending $6 million
Right.
of regional tax dollars, plus another $4 million of provincial dollars to retrofit existing commercial space at a cost higher than building new.
So we could report back on that option as to see what assistance SHIP needs to move in to use that commercial space, if that is indeed SHIP's intention, still is their intention. So the space can be used as commercial space to support the City of Brampton's land use preference along that strip as an alternative.
Well, there's a problem here. There's a problem with the numbers, and there's a problem in that what we're being asked to do really, from a financial standpoint, does not make any sense. And there are issues about converting commercial space to residential space in that building for the City of Brampton based on our vision for the Queen Street corridor. So the reason why it was requested that there be commercial space there was for that very reason, that it is part of the Queen Street corridor. We know that redevelopment is going to happen in that area. It's started. So we need to take another look at this. And I mean, I don't want to see lost dollars, but we're losing, if at the end of the day, we're not using the $4 million grant, we're not making a really poor financial decision with taxpayers' dollars. So, you know what? I would really look for some leadership and direction, Mr. Swark, from you.
Okay, well, in this case, I would suggest then that staff take it back, go and investigate other options for the use of that, given Brampton's land use preference for that strip, and come back to council with some other options.
Or a financial model that makes sense, because this one does not.
Okay.
And I would move that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Councillor Miles. Second, do you have a seconder? Councillor Moore? Do we need it read out? Any speakers? I have two people on the board. I don't think you did.
The recommendation had never been moved. You didn't have a
No,
mover and a
there was
seconder
no-
for the recommendation,
right.
so we're speaking on.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm sorry. In my notes, Councillor Spovier actually did move the staff recommendation when he spoke. It's not here. Okay. So.
Not here.
Right, so I'll take speakers to the motion that is currently on the floor.
There he is.
Too late.
Not too late.
Not too late. Okay. Councillor
I'm up.
Toby, speaking
Okay,
to the
thank
motion
you.
on the floor. Thank
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused myself. I have a few questions. So this commercial spaces, does it require a rezoning to turn it over to residential? within the mixed-use designation, I would assume?
Through the chair, no, it does not require rezoning.
Okay. The other thing I don't, and then the $4 million, so if we don't approve this today, we lose the $4 million, or can we use that $4 million in something else before the end of the year?
Through the chair, the ministry has confirmed that we cannot use that $4 million for another proposal or project. But they have said that if we approve this project, we would have the latitude to go back and renegotiate the capital costs or ask SHIP to renegotiate the capital costs.
Okay. And the other thing I noticed in here, I'm assuming this is a concrete building?
Yes, it is.
Be a concrete building. So I notice a lot of stuff about demolition in here, but I don't see any costing whatsoever for, I can't imagine that there's a lot of bathrooms in this commercial spot. So there'd be a lot of rejigging around actually physically putting in the infrastructure, kitchens, bathrooms. They're going to have to do all that work. That's not cheap.
Yes, Councillor, that is correct, and there is some information within the report as to the degree of retrofitting that they are needing to do,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
not-
significant.
Yeah, it's not particularly detailed, but I don't know. It seems like an awfully high price, and it doesn't sound to me like it doesn't sound to me like it really has a top yet, actually, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure. I'd like to hear from my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Tovey. Councillor Crombie speaking to Councillor Miles' motion.
Sure. So can I just ask for a point of clarification from the clerk, though? So if Councillor Sprovieri already moved the staff recommendation, where does that in the sequence? Oh, apparently you did. But that's okay. I was going to second it for you.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, I wrote it down.
All right, so we're just speaking to the
wrote it
motion,
down.
not his. Okay. Well, I was going to support the staff recommendation, and also because the councillor's not here to speak to it. So I don't want to see us oppose anything without the councillor being here to at least speak to what he would like to see in his area. So then why don't we defer it and have staff come back with another recommendation then to what are the next steps with respect to renegotiating the capital costs? I mean, I was opposed to the conversion initially as well, because I don't like to convert commercial use to residential either. We try not to, Mississauga, but at the same time, you have to look for best use. And if you can't rent it, if there is no commercial tenant, then let's make the best use out of that property, which we own, right? So let's convert it to seniors' use. I think that would be the best next steps. And of course, the conversion would cost more than building new, but then we don't have to buy the land. So that would add to the cost and that's the trade-off. You buy new land and you demolish it and start over. Anyways, I like to defer because the councillor's not here to speak to it, and perhaps ask staff to see if there can be any renegotiation room.
Just a point of clarification from Commissioner Sheehy. We have a timing issue, I believe. Do you not?
How soon?
So that is correct. We have to have this approved and sign a contribution agreement with the province. So what we would need in order to have that ability to go back and ask SHIP to renegotiate it is approval of the first recommendation related to the IAH funding, and then some subsequent revised recommendations, which we have actually drafted, I believe, and could put on the screen. Should the decision be made to approve the report but ask for a renegotiation on the pricing, that would secure the IAH funding.
That would be the direction I would support.
But you have a deferral on the floor now.
What is the timeline?
The contribution agreement
So
has...
the end of the month is Tuesday.
Right.
So we have
it
to make
has-
that decision today, so we can't defer it.
No, that's correct.
Wait.
When do we have to have the agreement signed with the province?
We have to have the contribution agreement signed, approved by council and signed by the end of February.
Well, that's
So we would need
Tuesday.
to approve it today, subject to the changes and the recommendations.
Then I'm going to withdraw the deferral, and I'm going to
you.
support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Crombie. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, how many residential units are already on this site?
Through the chair, 205.
And when was the building fully tenanted?
I believe the building's just been just finished renting up, excuse me, Oh, the complete rent-up will be done by the end of March.
Okay. So I hope that gives everybody around the table a little bit of a sense that this is a brand-new building. It has not yet been fully tenanted from a residential perspective. And it goes back to the point that I made, that there has not been sufficient time for the owner, and I don't know whether the owner is Ship or Martin Way, there's this blurry line between the two because this was kind of a unique project to start with. But in any event, how much effort has been actually put into tenanting the commercial space? This is not a conversion of commercial space in the sense that it was used for medical offices and insurance companies and lawyers, and so we have to tear all that out and create some residential units. This is what they call, I guess in the industry, a vanilla box. Those 2 floors are vacant. There's nothing in there. So the plumbing and everything is there. It's not like you have to take out units and create new washrooms. It's a matter of putting in washrooms and units if you were to put the residential in there. But that was my point. You've got a piece of property 2 addresses away where a significant investment is being made by Atlas Medical. They have obviously done their market research to determine that there is a demand and a need for office space along that corridor. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making a huge multi-million-dollar investment in the city of Brampton. This is 2 addresses away, on the corner, empty space. So if it's not fully tenanted yet from residential, there is an opportunity to rent up this space from a commercial perspective. I just don't believe that the energy, the effort, and the work that goes into doing that has been expended either by Ship or the other. The other piece of this is that, yes, Ship was going to move their head offices into this location. That was the plan right from the outset. That was what was marketed to the community across the street, that Ship were going to have their head office in there. And quite frankly, when you build a large building like this, that was a point of comfort for the community across the street when you have this many supportive housing units. They're not moving in because the cost of the rent is too high. That's why Ship is not moving in, and I think that goes back to Councillor Miles' point of how do we help and assist Ship to actually not do the bait and switch to the community that came to the table and didn't do a lot of pushback in terms of having this building built there. How do we help Ship move into that building? The fact is that the rent's too high. You can keep commercial space forever empty if you're going to charge too much rent, especially for the person that you thought was going to move in. And when the building was built, you had an anchor tenant that was already going to occupy that space. So I understand there's the funding piece, and that's why I said that this was very uncomfortable for me with the regional and the city hat. But I think that you're doing the city of Brampton a huge disservice. This commercial space, yes, it's up to 50 seniors that would be located there. It's 70 jobs. It's 70 jobs. And we have people in our city who are looking for jobs that are sustainable, that are good quality jobs, and that's what you're going to get along our Queen Street corridor. This is not retail jobs that you may see on the first level, the ground level, but it's office jobs, supporting, in all likelihood, the service industry, the medical community, healthcare, and some of those complementary businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree 100% with Councillor Moore. It's again, it's unfortunate that we're dealing with this on the last minute, but we're talking about a lot of money that we have the potential of losing if we don't go through with this. I think there might be another way. From what I understand, I don't think Ship needs the entire floor. So if they didn't require the entire floor and you could still put some units down on that second floor, then we could still utilize some of the funds from the province. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I'm actually going to ask Sue Ritchie to come down. She's our manager in charge of housing
Excellent.
development, and she has been having conversations with the ministry with respect to this particular project.
I think, through you, Chair, that that is an option that we could discuss further with SHIP. The challenge that we have with the IH funding, you may recall what led to the pressure we have today, is the provincial and federal announcement of the new SIF funding that came in June. You may recall in July we came to you and advised about the additional $35 million, which had very clear timelines. $14 million had to be allocated this year. At that time, this IH funding was actually allocated notionally for the Mayfield project, so it wasn't a concern about the timelines. With the new requirements for SIF and the timelines, we redirected the federal money because of the seniors allocation to the Mayfield project, which is why we're here today, under pressure for this. We've also been in negotiations with Appeal Board to acquire a property, and we've been unsuccessful in the last 6 months to get to a deal on that. So with the pressure we have, we do have to make either a commitment for the money by the end of February, which is next week has been mentioned, or they will reallocate that portion. We can go back and talk to SHIP about other options for it. The IH money is just allocated by unit, but if we go below the 27 for this, then we wouldn't receive the full amount because it's up to 150,000 per unit. So this calculation is based on how many units are there. So if we were to split it in half, we would split the allocation. We'd lose half of this money, is what I would respond.
That's unfortunate. Okay, what about if we waive DCs, how much per unit would this cost?
Yeah.
Finance guy.
Through the chair, the issue we wouldn't, mic's on somewhere, sorry about that. We wouldn't be in a position to waive DCs. We could provide a grant, so we'd actually still have to pay the DCs, but through a different envelope, through tax board, a grant to offset the DC cost. So in effect, the cost of the units would still be the same as what is in the report that you see today.
What did we just do with Holland Christian Homes?
So on Holland Christian Homes, they will be paying the full DCs. So we deferred the timing of the payments.
We deferred
the timing of the payment.
Deferral of development charges, okay. Okay, so we could essentially then provide a grant, okay. If we did that, how much per unit would this be? How much would we look
The
at?
cost will still be the same. It's just how you're allocating which pocket of money you're taking the source of funding from. We still have to go to the reserves to draw the grant out to to offset the DC cost. So it's a net zero gain. So there is no benefit in reducing the cost for the program on this.
What I'd like to do is try and so that we don't lose any funding and try and satisfy both my city hat and the regional hat, giving you the power to talk, but also with the commitment from council to say that, you know, when it's down to the wire here, we need to pull the trigger, and you have our approval to do that. So whether it's move the staff recommendation with an amendment to Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore's motion, maybe we go about doing it that way. Because we can't lose the funding. You can't lose the money. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Oh, I'm like, where's Miles? She's gone.
Through the chair, we do have a revised motion. Is it available to be shown on the screen?
Where's the money, everyone? What do you want me to ask? Councillor Pelletier, you still have the floor.
There was a couple other, SHIP did the actual appraisal. That's the numbers we're using, right? SHIP's appraisal numbers?
SHIP provided the information based on a appraisal that was completed.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And how long has Martin Way been trying to, Councillor Moore indicated that she just wanted some more background on how long they've been trying to market the space. From my understanding, I think it was 8 months.
Let me just.
Nobody could miss the
defer to
sign that
SHIP's
they
staff.
had out there.
Mauro, can you, or Leslie? How, 1 year. They're indicating 1 year.
1 year. Compared to some of the buildings that were in the area, there's the Bramalea building. What was the rental cost comparable to market? Do we know?
I would have no idea of that.
Let's go back up to the bleachers.
They don't.
You guys did market research when you were trying to market the retail space, the commercial space? You just don't have the information with you. Okay. I'm done. Thank you, Chair Downey.
Thank you, Councillor Pelletier. Councillor Toby.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to understand a little bit better the property tax implications. So we're going to be subsidizing the difference between the residential and the commercial property tax for the next 20 years. Is that what I'm reading through this?
Yes, through the chair, that is a requirement of taking IAH funding, that you will equalize those two ratios. So if your multi-tax ratio is higher than your residential ratio,
of course
you
it is.
have to provide that payment.
Okay, and does that payment come out of the 4 million, or does that payment just keep coming back to our budget every year?
That payment will appear in our budget each year.
Right. So each year, and that would be based on whatever the city of Brampton raises their taxes.
That's correct.
So we're looking at about another 700,000-800,000 for taxes probably, when it's all said and done, in a subsidy.
Well, of course, the appraised value of the building and the property tax rate will impact it, but it's about
Yeah.
$25,000 a year today.
For today?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that'd be maybe another 700,000-800,000 to $1 million, something like that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Starr.
I'm just astounded by the numbers. I was going to stay silent. I wasn't going to press, but first of all, last-minute decisions I don't like. And to be pushed into a corner by the province saying that we might lose it. Has somebody checked to see what the province will extend this?
I can confirm with you, we've had discussions with the province in our negotiations to move some of the money to future years, which we were successful in doing, about $4 million of the funding. We were able to negotiate a trade with other municipalities who have projects that are currently underway. We were unsuccessful in moving the remainder of this money forward. And so they've indicated to me and confirmed this morning that if we were not able to allocate this funding, that they would redirect it to another project elsewhere in the province, and it would not be, we wouldn't be compensated within the 6-year cycle of the IH agreement.
Well, I really think that with elections coming up and all the rest of it, that maybe you should be meeting with the minister, or somebody should be meeting with the minister through the chair or whatever. I mean, first of all, I'm astounded at $350,000 for a reno. And to say, well, you know, that's what we have to do. The building is up, and you're still spending $350,000. So that means it's if I take a look at it with the quantity of the space and whatever else, that's maybe like $450,000 per unit. You know what? Maybe we should be looking at a separate little building someplace, because for $450,000 per unit, you know what you can build? And we went through the same conversation in the conversion previously with the motel or whatever it was. And You know, I can, in good conscience, I'd love to see this go through. I'm not voting for this in its present form. I just can't. I mean, the numbers are nuts. I mean, I just can't, I don't know where the money is going and where the estimates came from and what due diligence was done and by whom. If this is all estimates from the contractor or from Martin Way or from somebody else saying, well, this is what it's going to cost, then you know what? Maybe we have to walk away, because I think it's just, I was in this business 30 years, maybe, I don't know, longer. And I saw what buildings were built, for instance, the one you were involved with, Sue, at the corner of Credit View in Eglinton, which Councillor Parrish was so great at starting. What's the cost of that building? Those two buildings, you'll know that right off. What was the cost of that building, those two buildings?
Cost for the units, recognizing that the land, part of the land was contributed for 250 units, was $207,000, and it opened in 2013.
Oh. Okay, so let's divide that by 10, and maybe we can make a deal. I mean, you know, I just think that there's the numbers, to me, don't work. And if they don't work without a deferral, without further investigation, I mean, I'd love to see it go through. I can't vote in good conscience for the taxpayers. I can't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Starr. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I agree with some of the other issues that have been spoken, and I guess when we talk about if it had been an old building, I would say, yes, let's do it. Let's bring her up to code. Let's get her done. But this is a brand new building, and when we talk about sustainability, we're supposed to look at how we build buildings so that they can transition easily into the future, not be stuck only going one way. And I know Councillor Pelletier would love to see maybe half the floor, but after 30 years also in construction, I can tell you that all those what they're asking for is going to then be put across only half the number of units. So the cost per unit is definitely going to go up, because the kind of construction I saw in here would have to be divided over half the units. So that to me doesn't make sense. And once it too, again, I agree that you know, coming last minute, to me, I hate anything that comes to me last minute. I'm a planner, plan, and rethink it. So I too wouldn't support this from the financial look at it. And then I look at what actually Brampton wants to do, and I'm hearing from the councillors that are closest to it, and they're saying, but that wasn't what is going to happen here isn't what the vision of Brampton was. So I have a hard time as a councillor from Caledon saying, well, sorry, I'm going to change your vision, because I don't believe in that. So I'm going to have to support my Brampton councillors closest to it, and the fact that it's just financially it doesn't make, it's not sensible to do it. A brand new building, no way. So I will support, well, I won't support the report, but I will support Councillor Moore and Councillor Gail Miles, because I believe they got it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parrish.
I know I said I wasn't going to speak again. No. In reference to the Credit View building, one of the reasons that came in under cost was I got the two developers, the Weldons, to take $1 million off, and they put free sprinklers in it because the legislation had been passed after that building was approved, and they went back and retrofitted it. And they wanted the building named after them, which never happened because I went on sabbatical and I wasn't there to make sure it happened. But they invested $1 million of their own personal money into that building. And they gave half the land, and the city of Mississauga put the other half of the land in. So don't use that as an example. And then the former mayor of Mississauga decided she didn't like the look of it, so we put $1 million into fake balconies, which are now rusting. So the decisions made by councillors, who are all experts, it's like when you go to school, you learn to read, so you think you can be a teacher. It's a simple thing that we can all sit around here and say we're experts on housing, we're experts on planning. But we have a staff that we pay. I don't know why they don't all just quit. The first recommendation this morning with the three ladies was this is not a good use of our money. We don't trust them. We don't trust their opinion. We just pay them to sit here and take up space and get abused. And now they're bringing this to us saying this is a good use of money. And we're going to organize a conference called Fair Share for Peel. Let's make sure we put up on the overhead that we threw $4 million back at the province to give somebody else. And we've sat through, George and Bonnie and I have sat through a housing panel for a year down at Port Credit. Sue Ritchie was there contributing. We had experts. And the final answer was from the developers, who are good, some of them, most of them, is there isn't a political will to ever do anything like this. So you can sit here and talk about it, and we can give you 50 ways of saving money and inspiring builders to come out and build. But you're all going to reject everything in your own backyard. There's not enough land out there, so if you went out to buy this thing and start over again, you have to buy a piece of land that's worth, what, $2 million an acre, $1 million an acre? This is a perfect use. You've got a commercial building that they couldn't rent for a year, so it's just sitting there degenerating. You've got $4 million from Ontario that says, use it today or it's gone. It's like when Councillor Tovey came to us and said, I need $1 million or I'm going to lose some funding for his small arms building. It was last minute. We all voted for it. Give yourselves a shake. We have experts. If I were them, if I was Sue Ritchie, I'd quit tomorrow. If I was she, I'd go back to wherever she came from because she's too smart for us. They're giving us their best advice. But we're all experts in building and planning and all the rest of it. So, okay, I'm voting for it, and it's a sad, sad state of affairs if we throw $4 million back at the province.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Patrick, go ahead. We'll hear from the solicitor.
Thank you. Council's articulating essentially three concerns. The loss of the provincial money is of concern, the change of use is of concern, and the cost per unit is of concern. We can address 2 out of 3 of those with the resolution that we have up now. If change of use is unacceptable, then that's a showstopper because the whole concept is premised on a change of use. So that's a fairly simple one. If we're moving past that, where a change of use is an acceptable, although undesirable result, and then the loss of provincial money can be stopped by giving staff the authority they're seeking to enter into a contribution agreement up to the amount of $3.9 million. That leaves the cost per unit. The cost per unit is high, as Councillor Starr has pointed out. The premise that the region has to absorb all of the conversion costs is a concept that I think we need not accept necessarily. There should be room for negotiation as to the amount of the conversion cost that the region would bear as against some of the conversion cost being borne by a combination of Martin Way and SHIP. With a target, I would suggest to you, of driving the $330,000 cost down towards the cost of a new build, which I don't have immediately handy, but that would be the objective of negotiation. With the authority that is being recommended to you here, we could attempt to drive the cost down. And that's why this particular version is suggested to you. So we can solve 2 out of the 3 problems, potentially.
Thank you. Mayor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Patrick, for that clarification. I think that was extremely helpful. I was kind of hoping this would come out in the course of the conversation, but I went back to the staff report that the City of Brampton got yesterday from our staff about this particular application. And the staff report says that the Hanson project site is situated within the Queen Street Corridor secondary plan, which is designated for mixed uses, including residential, retail, and office space. It's not located within a designated employment area, either within the official plan or the secondary plan. The proposed conversion of office space to residential is not subjected to our municipal comprehensive review. Our staff recommended it, thought it was a good idea. So I actually don't think it's a showstopper. I don't think it was with our staff, and I wish we'd had this debate yesterday at council, but we didn't. So I think from a technical perspective, it is part of that mixed use, and it's not located in a designated employment area. I think the funding for this project is not just provincial, it's federal, and you don't get these dollars easily. So I agree with Carolyn, Councillor Parrish. We spend a lot of time here spinning our wheels saying the province isn't stepping up and the feds aren't stepping up. Okay, they stepped up, they gave us a project. I agree, the cost per unit is prohibitive, but when you look at what has to be done, the removal of a commercial elevator stop and breaking up concrete and X-raying an entire floor to find out where the pipes and the gas lines are, I get it, it's expensive. But we have a partner doing this project, and I certainly don't like these last-minute projects. We seem to do a fair number of them, but I guess the bottom line for me is 27 units for seniors. I can't remember the last time we did anything this radical, except when we put 30 spots for homeless youth. I mean, I think we're making, I wish it was by bigger numbers. I wish we were doing 127, but 27 new residential units takes, a lot of people to a place where they actually have a home to live in. So I appreciate the staff has tweaked it. I think it gives the staff the ability to effectively negotiate on our behalf to find a more effective and something more palatable for us as elected officials. I'm prepared to support the motion as it is now, and I thank the staff for negotiating better language in this that gives us a comfort level, but we need to get involved far earlier in the process. So I'm happy to support it, and I think we've had a very robust debate on it. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Why would you not be recommending that we just buy some of the units that are already built? Which would probably be a lower cost.
More of the condo units. We actually attempted to do that at the same time as the other strategies were underway. So we do have an in-camera report on what we were successful in doing. Of the other condominium developers that are about to start or underway, none of them meet the criteria for the funding in terms of the timelines for the construction or the cost in terms of our analysis of what we would do.
So this building would not meet the criteria? Are there no units in this building that we could
This building
purchase?
is owned by SHIP, and they are rental units, so because they were all funded under previous IH agreements, there are requirements on the use of those units, right? The rent levels that are provided, there's 82 units provided to those on the wait list, and some additional units that are funded with LIN funding for supportive units. And then there's a certain portion that are at market but lowly subsidized, right?
Okay.
So there are requirements around all of those 205 units for the building.
Okay, and there was nothing else in that district, in that
Nothing else
area
there.
that we could purchase?
No.
Because that always seems to be the best way to provide the housing at a much lower cost and have it already built.
Right. And there was nothing for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spilvieri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to staff. Should council support this motion and we go back and try to negotiate a better price with SHIP or Martin Way or whoever it is, and we move ahead and get the grant, but we fail to get a better price? Is that are we locked into this deal regardless of what happens in negotiations?
So through the chair, if we failed to arrive at a price that we were satisfied with, we would lose the funding if we didn't proceed with the project.
Okay, so I'm willing to move the motion, provided the staff work out a better price and perhaps even get a second opinion, get somebody in there to do an evaluation of what the price should be, and bring back a report and see if we can get it, make a better deal. So I'm willing to move the motion as is, provided staff work on that. Okay?
Councillor Spilvieri, we're speaking to the motion that's on your screen at this time.
Right.
So it already has a mover and a seconder.
Has a mover? Oh, okay.
Is it not? Is
I
this
don't
not
believe so.
Miles and-
They want to get rid of it, I thought.
Okay.
This is the
I don't believe there was a mover.
Staff's by-
I was supposed to have moved it originally.
Okay.
That's right, you did, because you stepped out.
Okay.
That's right.
So I'm moving it now.
So, okay, moved by, okay. So the motion on the screen, moved by Councillor Spillieri, and I can take speakers. I need a seconder. Mayor Crombie, speakers to that motion, Councillor Miles.
I don't know what happened to my motion. That I moved and was seconded by Councillor Moore, and that was to refer the thing back to staff. But I do understand that there is a time frame involved here. So respecting the time frame, I would like, and thank you, Mr. Connor, for articulating the 3 points of contention, because those are the 3 points of contention. And all three coupled together makes it, in my mind, a no-go. But if you can come to a reasonable price, then I could support it. But we're not going to have the option or the opportunity as a council to make that decision. So what I would like to know is what is the... Okay, so the report says that the price per unit costs at $335 are higher than traditional new construction. What would be a reasonable cost per unit? I'm sure you've been over and over this, so you must have some idea of what's reasonable.
Through the chair, I think we would need to do a little bit more analysis on that. Certainly, we have historical information as to unit costs, but we don't have anything that's right up to date.
Do we know what the per unit cost was for the units in that building already?
Yes, when the units were built, 296,000 per unit.
Is that 196?
Oh, I'm sorry, 279? Okay, sorry, 279 per unit.
No, deferral. I voted deferral.
No, they're 279, so we're looking at another 65,000 per unit.
Okay. Okay. That's why I'm wondering where that was.
Well, I would like to see a ceiling put in here.
This one,
What is it? Where do you see?
3.9 total. Not per unit, but total.
If I may
Commissioner
just,
Sheehy? Yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
if I may just clarify, the 3.9 is securing the provincial federal funding. Staff would go back, work with SHIP to try to negotiate a lower price per unit, and that lower price per unit would come out of the regional funding. So what you would see is a decrease in the need for regional funding.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just as a very practical matter, there won't be an opportunity to come back to council with that deal and get its approval. We're looking for that authority now, simply because the contribution agreement can't be conditional upon arriving at a separate deal on the per unit price. So we're going to have to take the plunge really short term and either get to a deal or not in order to enter into the contribution agreement. And so we won't have the luxury of coming back with second opinions or for council's endorsement.
Well, I would like to suggest a per unit ceiling cost of about 300,000 maximum. I'm not going to put it in the motion, but I think considering that the building has just been finished, that the per unit cost was $279 per unit, given the prices that we are paying for other units, that a price of around 300,000 should be our ceiling. This is just not the way to do business, I'm sorry. I have a real difficulty with spending taxpayers' dollars this way. Because it doesn't matter how you shape this story, this is all taxpayers' dollars. Municipal taxpayers, provincial taxpayers and federal taxpayers. So we can say, oh, well, it's just money from the province or the federal government, but at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' dollars. And I don't want to be the one that they're pointing their fingers at that's saying you're wasting taxpayers' dollars. And to me, and I've never said that I was an expert. I've never said that I'm grasping at straws, but what we have is a report that's in front of us that really council should be turning down, but we've been put in a position where we can't do anything. We're in a box. So, you know, I'm not asking for a way out, but I'm asking for a resolution of this that is not wasting taxpayers' dollars. That's what I'm looking for. And I think it's unfortunate that it didn't come here before this. And I think it's unfortunate that I think the whole situation is just not a good situation, and that we are, our feet are being held to the fire in terms of, well, we're going to lose 4 million, but we're going to throw away, no, I'm not going to say throw away, we're going to spend another 6 million to get the 4 million, whether it's a good deal or not. I don't know if that's the way you conduct your business in your own home, but it's certainly not something that I would ever contemplate in mine.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Pleshy.
I think what we're hearing, and specifically from Councillor Miles, is 100% right. Like, we cannot have a report come to us like this where we're, you know, the gun is to our head and we need to decide. It's just not, you know, mistakes happen when stuff like this happens. And so I think, you know, I'm fully prepared to second the motion that's here. I don't know, the chair's going to have to work out where the motions lie, but I think staff really need to come back and in the near future, once this is resolved, and give us somewhat of a breakdown. I think that's really what's needed here. You know, people talk about the high unit cost, and you know, we've talked a little bit about the, you know, the demolition and the infrastructure that's there, the new infrastructure that needs to go in, but the actual cost of that, I think, is what we're kind of, I think that's the gap where we are. If it was from affordable to wow, that's a lot of money, with, you know, Councillor Starr pointing out that you know, 30 years ago it would have been a lot less. I think that's what he got. That's what I got out of that. But, you know, with and just to mention, the 279 is the way the units were when they went on the market, but compared to now, like, I think we need that comfort level to find out where, you know, where this has gone, and hopefully that'll satisfy some minds. We'll see what happens, but I'm prepared to support this motion here today. Hopefully get it for a little bit cheaper. We'll see what happens. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Jeffrey.
Could I ask for a recorded vote on this, please? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the $279 per unit that it costs to build, that's an all-in cost. That's the land, that's...
Through the chair, that's correct. I would also note that that cost was arrived at when the project was committed September 2012.
Okay, so $279 per unit. I guess what I'm trying to figure out of the $10 million or the $9 million, how much of that is going to actually be construction cost? And how much of that is going to go to buy the units from Martin Way or SHIP?
The conversion construction costs are a little over 4 million, and the acquisition based on the appraised value they have is 5 million.
Okay, so we're buying the space for 5 million,
Buying the space and the parking spots that go with it,
and the actual cost of the
Conversion.
construction is 4
a
million.
little over 4 million.
Okay. I'm not sure that helps me out anymore on that. I just don't think the math cuts it. It's, this is way too much. $5 million for, I don't know how many square feet this is, 2 floors of office? No, I think it's 2 floors. This is 1 floor.
It's conversion of 1 floor.
1 floor of commercial space in Brampton we're going to buy for $5 million.
How many square feet?
I don't know how many square feet it is. Don't really care. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson?
Thank you. Just one question to staff. Have we ever come close to paying this type of fees per unit on anything for SHIP?
For SHIP, no. For the other projects, no. You'll note from the in-camera report for some of the new condo acquisitions, costs are higher just in 2017 because of some of the increased value that's occurring in the market today.
Councillor Starr put out some numbers there, which best I could do, I agree with them, but do you agree with them? The numbers that we get up to when an all-in?
Well, I'm not sure what was included in those additional numbers that Councillor Starr is providing that would bring it up to 450,000, so.
Well, I guess
We'd
it would
have to
be,
have
I
that.
guess it would be everything that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The cost and everything.
So from the costs that we have here, this is all in. SHIP takes responsibility for operating costs for these units based on the rents that are provided for that. So there isn't anything additional that isn't included in what's in the report today.
So, I guess you're not disagreeing with Councillor Starr's number. Sounds to me like it's a reasonable assumption that we'd be paying around $450,000 per unit
If I may, may I?
with all in.
I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding perhaps with the $450,000 number. So we're not paying twice for these floors. The 2 commercial space floors were funded and financed by Martin Way. So when SHIP takes over that floor, everything is included in the per unit cost, including the purchasing of that floor.
Right, so what's the per unit cost?
$335,200.
Still way over. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raz?
I think we've had good debate here. Can we call the question, please?
So just for clarification to the clerk, I believe we have 2 motions on the floor at this time. Is that correct? Or
We have Councillor
Councillor
Miles' referral of the original staff report, and we have,
The amended
which
staff
will be voted on first, and then there's the recorded vote on the motion that's before you on the screens.
So,
Thank you.
come. Thank you. So recorded vote, all in favor of the motion on the floor? Staff, amended staff? Okay, you can do it. Thank God.
Recorded vote. All those in favor of the motion as it appears on the screen, please rise. Councillor Carlson, Mayor Crombie, Councillor Fonseca, Mayor Jeffrey, Councillor Kovac, Councillor Mahoney, Councillor McFadden, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Parrish, Councillor Raz, Councillor Sato, Councillor Sprovieri, Councillor Tovey. All those opposed, please rise. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Groves, Councillor Miles, Councillor Moore, Councillor Shaughnessy, Councillor Starr. Yeah, the motion carries.
Thank you, and those are all the items for Human Services. Back to you, Chair Dale.
It's up to council. We should get through it pretty quickly, I would think. There's under other business, there's a request to do a delegation at the next council meeting. Is It's in your agenda here. Moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor McFadden. All in favor? That they're approved. Oh, sorry, Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to support it coming here, but then I looked up and Raz was also on the board, and she wanted to hear it from a CVC perspective. So I'll relinquish and let Raz speak to it.
He's got to recognize me, I guess. Anyways, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if this is best heard initially at a Credit Valley Conservation Board meeting, and then we can also get some input from Credit Valley staff before it comes to Peel Council. Can we do a referral to CVC?
Yep.
Okay.
To both?
Yeah, because it's a watershed issue, so we have the Humber watershed.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the motion would be to refer to both CVC and TRCA, moved by Councillor Raz, seconded by Councillor Sprovieri.
Right.
All in favor of that then? Carried. Notice of motion. Councillor Sato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a notice of motion here today. It's a fairly simple one to reduce the speed limit on Britannia Road through wards 9 and 10 from 70 kilometers to 60. And Councillor McFadden has agreed with my recommendation. I was looking at doing it through my ward, and she is also interested in through hers. The motion's very self-explanatory, and I would like to deal with it. Staff...
Councillor Sato, if we're going to deal with it today...
Yeah, I'm going to move that now,
okay.
if I can.
Move a motion to deal with it?
Yeah, so
okay.
if first of all, if I could move a motion that we deal with it today.
Okay, and we require 2/3 support
Right.
for that. Okay. So all those in favor? Okay, it's carried.
Thank you. So with regard to the motion, the speed limit on Britannia Road is currently 70 through the residential portion of my ward and Councillor McFadden's ward. Derry Road, which is a very similar cross-section of roadway, through the residential portion of our wards is 60 kilometers and has been for some time. The residential area along Britannia Road has increased significantly, and we have some intersections that have a very high number of pedestrians, especially Glen Erin and Britannia in particular. I drive the road quite frequently, and 60 kilometers is an acceptable speed on that roadway. I've met with regional staff, and I basically told them I want to really push this through anyway, because regardless of what they, I think I said, I don't care what your report says. But I put a lot of thought into this, and I've done a lot of work on traffic issues in my ward and around the city, and there's just no reason for that speed limit. It's 60 kilometers when it arrives in Councillor Carlson's ward, then drops to 50. When you go further west into Milton, it's 80 kilometers, but as soon as it goes through any residential in Milton, they have lowered the speed limits to 60 kilometers through there as well. So it just seems to fit when we have residential. So Councillor McFadden is seconding the motion that is before us, and I would hope that Council would support it today.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Through you to the councillor, I just have one question. We ran into a problem in Brampton where we couldn't put crossing guards because of the speed limit. Is this an area where where children are bused today across this? And I'm asking the question because the school board may attempt to replace the bus if they can, because you can't put a crossing guard on a 70-kilometer-an-hour roadway. So there may be kids bused today that'll have to walk, and the city of Mississauga will have to put a crossing guard. I just put that out there as something, an issue that we ran into in the city of Brampton.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Sorry, just to clarify, the only students that have to cross are high school students. There are both elementary and Catholic schools on both the north and the south side, and the only location that they would be crossing is at Glen Erin Drive. There may be some at 10th Line as well, but those are all high school students. So there would be no impact on walking busing.
Not that I can see merit in this, Councillor Sato. Typically, though, this would have gone back to staff to do a report to come forward. So I think, just in fairness to the members of council, staff, I just want to hear a comment from staff as to their position. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we have prepared a report for next council, which will be March 9th, recommending against the speed limit drop.
Thank you. So you've heard staff's position. Certainly, the councillors made it clear with respect to this. Yeah, I've been there. Okay, Councillor Sato.
Yeah. When I met with staff, and I pointed this out to them, and anyone that's driven on Britannia Road or Derry or any of the other roads know this, traffic technicians, no offense to staff, but the goal is to move traffic through during rush hour as much as possible. On Britannia Road, rush hour is heading eastbound in the morning, and you're lucky if you can drive 40 kilometers an hour during the peak times when there is traffic on the roadway. So dropping it to 60 will not have any impact whatsoever on traffic flow along Britannia Road. It won't matter a hill of beans of what the traffic does, because if they ever get up to 60, they would be very lucky at those rush hours.
You're quite correct in that. Okay, the motions before us has been moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Councillor McFadden. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Moves us to bylaws. That's okay. Have a motion moved by Councillor Pelletier, seconded by Councillor Gibson, that the bylaws listed on the Regional Council agenda, being bylaws 12-2017 and 13-2017, be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Inquiries from regional councillors. Councillor Parrish.
Yes, I have two. Don't need answers today. One is, I've been getting an enormous number of disruptions, particularly in the commercial area, in Ward 5, water main breaks, no shut-offs. I don't know if it's unusual or if it's because it's such a big geographical area with so much business, but I would like a response at some point as to whether this is normal because of the winter, because of the crappy weather, not enough snow covering everything. I don't know what it is, but the businesses are screaming at me. A lot of them work over the weekends in their outside water. I must compliment our staff, though. They are very fast. And even when the weather's really cold, they're out there getting the repairs done really, really quickly. I just wonder if some of this stuff needs replacing in certain parts of the area of Ward 5. The second one is, I'd like an update in camera at our next meeting on negotiations with our CUPE unions. And I'd like a comparison done with some of the settlements that are coming in our three municipalities and the rest of the GTAA.
Councillor Parrish, on your first inquiry, maybe I would just suggest that you meet with the commissioner on that, or send him more
I hate
specifics.
bugging them. I'd rather do it right now, and then they
All
can
right.
do it at their own speed. They don't need to set up
As long
meetings
as you're
with
not,
me.
there's no urgency.
Nope.
Okay, good stuff. Seeing no other inquiries, then in camera to, sorry. In camera, Councillor Mahoney's on the board. Councillor Mahoney.
Thank you. As this is in Ward 8 and Ward 4, and in consultation with Councillor Kovac, I'm more than happy to move the recommendation and don't feel a need to go in camera if everybody agrees.
All right, so it's been Counselor Miles?
I have a question on the report, sorry.
Well, then we'd have to move in camera.
Move in camera, please.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Gibson. All those in favor then to move in camera? Can I see a show of hands? All those in favor to move in camera? Opposed, if any? Carried.